1. We did it, guys. Only 30 seconds late. It's the Hoop Ball 2019 Trade Deadline Live Special. I'm Dan Bespris. I'll be with you the whole 4 hours. I got some primo guests lined up. But before I even get into the whole lineup, I want to say hi to my good buddy. And, oh, the big dogs just got on as well. We got 2 of them. We're ready to roll.
Arf, arf.
Aaron Bruschi, founder of Hoop Ball, El Arquitecto, Neil Rochlani, host of the Box Score Breakdown. Brew, good morning.
Good morning, guy. I told you I'd make it on time.
That was a squeeze, man. That was a real tight squeeze. So there's one thing that I'm working on right now. As people know, I'm sort of fixing the tech stuff as we go. And because I have this set up in a way where I can kind of move the 2 of your heads around, I might be asking my guests to shift either up or down in their chairs during the show. It's super classy. That's how we do it here at Hoop Ball. But we got graphics. So while that's going on, Neil, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
You all right? You okay?
I've got a bit of a cold, but I'm doing all right. It's
Me
good
too.
to be here.
Me too. We're fighting it. I actually put a box of tissues just right up here off camera so I can get this thing figured out. So Brew, I think if I could ask you to shift slightly lower and to your left.
That's so much to ask for, Dan.
All right, just lower. How about just lower?
See, that's actually more annoying than shifting to the left. But I'll do it. For you, Dan, I'll do anything.
Or, conversely, Neil, could you get higher?
No. I can shift lower. I can shift lower. I can do this. I'm a team player, guys.
All right. Yeah, that's the great Aaron Bruschi.
Is that working for you right there?
Yeah, I mean, now we got, see, I had the top of your head cut off for a minute there, and I want people to see the full splendor that is the great Aaron Bruschi.
You want people to see my hairline.
That's right.
What you're saying. Got it. Okay.
Listen, if you cut it off right above the eyebrows, we all look pretty bad. So I wanted to give everybody a quick introduction. This is, of course, the Trade Deadline live show. We're going 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific time. You can see on your screen if you're watching. It is presented by our good pals at Hawaiian Isles, Kona Coffee Company. It got their logo in there instead of the holiday one. So, win number 2 for Bespris for the morning. You can follow us on Twitter at HoopBallFantasy. You've got my Twitter handle on the screen, but because I got all the different guests rotating in that top right box, I'll just try to tell you their information as they pop up. You can, of course, follow Brew on Twitter at Aaron Bruschi, AARON, and Neil Rochlani on Twitter at BallWithNeil, BallWithNeil. Check him out on Twitter. And, of course, if you're finding us here for the first time, welcome. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel or just find us all on Twitter, and we basically just send everything out that we do via social media. Gentlemen, not much this morning, which I'm actually kind of thankful for to this point because we already had 10 trades before we even got into today. Brew, I'm going to go to you first on this one. Is this the busiest lead-up to the trade deadline you can remember?
Ooh, that's a good question. I thought you were going to ask the other question. Maybe. Man, all these years are kind of blurring. But it did make me remember, I want to say like 6 years ago, 7 years ago, hell, maybe even 8 years ago. And it was when Twitter was in its infancy. There was this massive trade deadline where at least I think a third of the league got traded, if not more. And people really didn't know what Twitter was at the time. So it was the first time we had this convergence of news breaking and total chaos, and everybody was just ecstatic about it. Nobody slept. It kind of feels like that. And, this is what happens when a big piece like Anthony Davis becomes available and teams start jockeying. And, we also might have seen some of the smoothing or probably the lack of smoothing in the salary cap rebound a little bit where, that lack of smoothing really hindered the trade market. Now that contracts and salaries have evened out, maybe even with the playoffs, pictures getting a little bit more clear and teams sorting out, are they buyers, are they sellers, are they competing? But those big pieces are definitely driving a lot of the conversation.
And Neil, how's being on this end of the wall? I mean, I know you were hosting the premium show at this point last year, but what's it like having a nightly show you put out when all this craziness is going on?
I was so stressed out last night. Like Adrian and I tried to do all the major trades from yesterday, in addition to the box scores. And it's so much going on and so much uncertainty and flux that it was not like this last year. That's all I remember. So just trying to get a handle on things, but it's been It throws you to the fire, which is, I guess, kind of good, right?
Is it?
I don't know. I'm trying to see a bright side of all this.
You guys see that picture of Tibbs last night when he's on TV and he's just looking like a dog with foaming mouth? That's how I felt all last night.
Yeah,
just sitting there staring at it all.
I didn't sleep so great. We do, by the way, have our first trade of the day. It's not a Whopper, but it's a Shams bomb. It's like a Shams cherry bomb. That's like the small one you can put in a toilet, right? Shams cherry bomb. I'm confirming that this is real. Indeed it is. Houston is sending James Ennis to the Philadelphia 76ers. We don't know what's going back the other way yet, so I'm just going to put that on the list, and we'll get to it when we get to it. So I figured while we wait for the crazy stuff to break, we can talk a little bit about the things that have gone on so far. So, Neil, I'll loop back around to you on this one. What have you made of the Knicks Mavs trade now that we've been able to see the guys play for both teams?
Well, I do think Wesley Matthews is going to have some value going forward. I think that's the one thing I'll take away from that. On the Dallas side, I am still not sold on Hardaway Jr. I want to see how he fits in there. So I guess that's the one piece I'm thinking about. There's talks of DeAndre Jordan getting bought out in New York, so I'm not going to bank on that. And those were the key pieces, I believe, unless I'm missing someone.
Yeah, and then, of course, you've got whatever guys might have caught a little bit of extra bonus as a result of the trade. Brew, we saw with the sort of, call it additional stuff with Dallas that shook out yesterday, and I guess I can't really separate the Knicks-Mavs trade from the Kings-Mavs trade, and might as well ask you, since the Kings are related and you're covering them, Harrison Barnes to the Sacramento Kings for Zach Randolph and Justin Jackson. When you put all of that stuff together, we won't even get into the three-way Kings trade just yet. I'm mostly kind of honing in on Dallas right now. What do you think about Dwight Powell? What do you think about Maxi Kleber? What do you think about Zebo, Jackson? What do you think about Tim Hardaway Jr., Trey Burke, Courtney Lee? Any of these guys jumping out at you as dudes that could hang on the rest of the way?
Well, I detailed a lot of this in the Trade Journal, or whatever you want to call it, live blog that I'm doing today. So just go click on the site, and should be right there up on the homepage. There's just a lot of value opportunity in Dallas. You're taking a pretty high usage player in Harrison Barnes, and you're kicking him out of the equation. You've also kicked out Wes Matthews and DeAndre Jordan. So, you do have the incoming players. Tim Hardaway Jr. gets a great opportunity here to prove his value. He's been up and down this year, dealing with injuries, really needed a change of scenery. Luka Doncic is going to get maxed out. I don't know if he will have much more value than he already has, because I think he's going to lose efficiency. But, you just look up and down that rotation there. A guy like Jalen Brunson's got a deficient stat set, but if the areas that he's deficient in work for you, he'll be worth a look. Trey Burke could get another lease on life, or Rick Carlisle might decide he doesn't like him, as he does with point guards pretty often, and, toss him off to the side. But the bigs, Dwight Powell and Maxi Kleber, I'm rating them as late round values going forward. I think Powell has a hint of mid-round upside. He's also on the trade block right now, so it will be interesting to see if he gets dealt, then Maxi Kleber will become an obvious must-own, must-add type player. Both players might have a little bit of trouble during the Dirk send-off tour. Probably not a lot, because I don't think Dirk can even handle much more than 20 minutes per game right now. Just a ton of value gain there. I think even like a Dorian Finney-Smith in deeper leagues could get his typical 30 minutes per game run when Dallas is shorthanded. So, again, just a lot going on there. And, I'm pretty bullish on all of them.
Yeah, so this is the game that I've been playing on my Twitter account so far, and I wonder if it's a good one for us to do as part of the show, and that is if you had a weekly moves limit. Because, if you're in a spot where you can just sort of flip guys on and off your roster willy-nilly, taking shots on guys like Powell, like Kleber, whatever, that's a no-brainer. But what if you're limited by the number of stuff you can do, and you're coming up on the trade deadline, which we are today? Brew, would you use weekly moves on Powell and Kleber? Are you that bullish on those two guys?
I would, and because they fit this criteria, and maybe not for the shallow leagues out there, your 10-teamers or your 12-teamers that aren't as competitive, but both of them have late-round value floors. So to me, those are always great bets to make. You know what you're getting, and they're serviceable in a pinch. You could use them in 4-game weeks, even in 3 game weeks, or probably 3 game weeks if your team is banged up. No downside there. The only downside for somebody like Powell is if he gets moved. I think we've seen some good early indications from him as well that he can handle the increased playing time and be productive with it. So yeah, I like both of them for weekly odds limits.
All right, there you go. Neil, what do you think about some of those big guys? Are you using weekly moves on them?
My leagues tend to be a little more shallow, 12-team leagues, and I am not. I think Kleber is a little bit safer. I think he has more of a defined role. Powell, I think his variance is so much higher. I think he could end up being better than Kleber, but I think he could also have a much lower floor. So if you're looking for upside, I would go with him. But neither one I'm too bullish on. I'm still trying to figure out Dallas's rotation. So
thanks,
neither one
downer.
neither one has really impressed me so far in terms of what I've seen the last few days. Go ahead.
I was just calling you a Debbie Downer. I like Kleber. I like Kleber a lot because he's shown that block rate and the ability to step out and hit a 3 while not really crushing his percentages, and that fits a lot of my builds really well. I had a couple of teams that either needed 3s or blocks or both, and in a punt assist team that I have going right now, he's like the ultimate no-brainer. Powell I had picked up and then dropped because it looked like he was getting squeezed by Kleber playing center, and then the move of Harrison Barnes, like Brew just said, you got to wonder if that now opens up a whole bunch of minutes. Brew, what can we expect from Barnes in Sacramento?
Well, okay, so Vivek Ranadive's loved Barnes forever. I think they've had their eye on him for a while. So he's going to get pushed in. And if you're looking at this purely basketball-wise, you don't want to take the ball out of De'Aaron Fox's hands. You definitely don't want to take the ball out of Buddy Hield's hands. And Marvin Bagley has been shooting too much, actually, and taking a bunch of bad shots because his confidence is overflowing right now. And you kind of want to live with that if you're the Kings, because even if he's not doing the right things now, you're really seeing the emergence of a potential number 1 scorer in this league. So you got 3 guys right there, and Bogdan Bogdanovic that arguably should have the ball ahead of a Harrison Barnes as well. Now, that's not how things work in this league. When guys are brought in and they've got front office support, he might end up being a 2 or 3 option, probably not a 2, but a 3 or a 4. And that might be a little too much, and it might unbalance the team a little bit. I think he'll stay within a late round value no matter what. Mid round value is pretty questionable. And this is going to hurt each of those guys a little bit. Probably not taking from any one guy, except for I'd think Bogdan Bogdanovic is the low man on the totem pole here. There'll just be a squeeze on minutes and touches, and it's usually the 3rd or 4th guy that takes the hit. Fox will take a mild hit. Hield shouldn't take a hit. He's having an amazing all-star season, if you ask me. And but if there's just too many players and not enough basketballs to go around, but they're going to be competitive down the stretch, and that will actually bode well for a lot of their guys as long as they stay in the playoff chase. Things won't get too weird there.
All right, let's move along to, and we might as well wrap up the Kings portion of the proceedings here. The 3-way deal that landed Iman Shumpert in Houston, Marquise Chris and Brandon Knight in Cleveland for however long we don't know, and Alec Burks to the Sacramento Kings. Brew, you were a little bit critical of this move.
No, actually, well, what I was saying early on was that if there wasn't another shoe to drop, and that was it was actually a little fun foray back into reporting. If there wasn't another shoe to drop, it would make no sense to add another ball handler and take away the guy that's not really a small forward, but is defending the small forward position. A lot of people pointed out that Alec Burks is a little taller, a little bit longer, and Iman Shumpert is a real defender in this league. Burks is not. And so that looked really kind of, questionable on the outside. And so digging around with sources and such, finding, following the clues and the Easter eggs, we got to this point where right when Harrison Barnes was announced, the chatter surrounding the Kings picked up within like the last 5 minutes. So, that's when I fired off a tweet sort of like, hey guys, look at this. This doesn't make sense from a basketball perspective. Something's about to happen here. And then right after that, you got the news with Barnes. So I'm not critical of the deal. I think Burks in a pure backup 10 to 15 minute role is actually a good fit. They might try to play him a little bit more. They might try to shoehorn him into small forward a little bit. Not a great move if you ask me, but it's not something that's detrimental. They were clearly opening up space at small forward for Harrison Barnes. I do think they like Burks. internally. But yeah, no, it's a great move for Houston, actually. Iman Shumpert has revitalized his career. He's shown in a kind of a gear and offense that we've never seen in his career, where he's aggressive and he kind of knows what he wants to do out on the floor. He's been miscast as a point guard in the past. And then his time in Cleveland was just basically standing around and watching LeBron do his thing. In that Houston system, I don't think he's going to be a whole lot better, but I think his highs will be a little bit higher than normal. He'll still need time off from time to time to rest up. Injuries have dogged him and he doesn't have a lot of durability, but, fitting in with that team, allowing them to switch more, shooting the three, just having another capable body, that's going to help them out a lot. So I think it was a good deal for both sides.
All right, Philly is the next stop on our what's already happened tour de force here, and they've been busy. They've been involved in 3 of the 11 trades so far. They just picked up James Ennis, as we mentioned a moment ago, in our very quiet start to trade deadline Thursday. But obviously they had the big trade from 2 days ago in the middle of the night when they picked up Tobias Harris, Boban Marjanovic, and Mike Scott in exchange for Landry Shamet, Wilson Chandler, and Mike Muscala. By the way, those of you watching, you'll notice I'm not talking about the picks involved in these trades because, yes, that's relevant for reality purposes, but for fantasy purposes, means nothing to us right now. So, Neil, I feel like I can try my best to sugarcoat it a little bit, but doesn't it seem like Tobias Harris has to take a hit moving from the number 1 or 1B option on the Clippers to probably the 3rd or 4th option on the 76ers? I can't see that getting better for him. I feel like a best-case scenario is minimal drop-off.
Yeah, exactly. I don't see how it can get better. I mean, that would be, I guess, against the law of physics. I think, I was trying to project what I think his stats might be, and I have him. I've heard, a lot of experts say around 40 or something like that. He might drop to, and that seems what I think his ceiling would be. I think he could go even lower. It really depends on how he's being used there. He's not a selfish player. He's someone who's willing to defer to other players and play his role. So we'll have to see what exactly they're asking him to do. I know they probably want him to spread the floor and take more threes, which could hurt his field goal percentage a bit. He's such an efficient player. The rebounds, I have to imagine, will come down, like you said, and then we'll have to see the other parts of his game. But I expect him to be around 50. I think that would be safe. I mean, whenever there's uncertainty, I always discount it a bit. I don't want to be like the only Debbie Downer, though. So
now let me join you.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I think that's kind of where I see him.
Yeah, I think I wrote top 75. I'll check the column. That's what I was feeling, because I mean, you got 3 big time players there, and he is, like Neil said, a guy that will defer and fit in, and he's the new guy. New guy always doesn't try to, take too many shots, especially with that group right there dealing with chemistry. Yeah, no, it's unfortunate. He's had a great season, but trade deadline hit.
All right, what about on the Clippers side? Since they traded away their top scorer on the team, I know Gallinari is expected to try to play tonight. I think he might have been upgraded from questionable to probable. He's somewhere between the two at the very least this morning. I've been pretty buried in trying to get the trade stuff right for the show. We've seen Patrick Beverley playing well. I have to assume he's on the trade block. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's played better of late as they've sort of cleared out more shots and opportunity for the guards on this team. Lou Williams, he could potentially get traded. The Clippers, it almost feels like a silly exercise to try to figure out who's going to have value right now when that could be completely different 2.5 hours from now.
Yeah, but that's kind of what this is all about. The scales, they're constantly changing, and it's easy to say somebody's an ad once the table is set or drop or whatever. So as we go into this, you're looking at, say, like a guy like Patrick Beverley, who could theoretically be a mid-round value. We've seen him pop off with mid-round value spurts for stretches at a time with this team. Has been pretty good as of late. Did slow down a little bit recently, but if he survives the trade deadline, he's been a rumored trade guy. The Clippers have definitely pivoted toward the future. I don't know that they're tanking, but probably something in that ballpark. So if he survives, he could be good. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to have a more steady. I think he could be a late round value, probably 80% chance, and then maybe even a hint of mid round upside if they really clear things out and just let him go. Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell will probably get maxed out as far as minutes and touches go. in their respective roles. Beyond that, you're kind of looking at what if, like, could Mike Muscala reach up and actually do something? He's been bad in Philly this year. Maybe the fit's not great. There's been moments you've seen him play well, dealt with some injuries, and has a medium stat set that can be useful. Do they look at him and say, hey, you know what, he's going to be better than Marcin Gortat, and Gortat really doesn't need to be playing right now anyway. So a lot of guys, if you squint and look, and I think this is actually bad news for Danilo Gallinari. Anything that moves them more towards tanking or more towards not caring about winning is just more opportunity for him to rest. And he's had a nice run. If don't get me wrong, if he stays healthy, he might get a few more touches and actually have more value. But it's been a great year for him. I don't know that he can do much better.
Yeah, and I was looking at contract stuff. His 22 or 23 million or whatever it is, they almost kind of need it on the books if they were going to try to move guys to trade for someone who, like an Anthony Davis or Bradley, whoever they may be targeting in the offseason, who has a $25 million contract or more. So Gallo likely to stay, I think, in Clipperland from what I can understand. But nothing is for certain. You know me, guys. I'm a unabashed Pat Beverly fan. He's made my list of old men guys at the beginning of the year, and he finally looks a little bit healthier too. The defensive stats are starting to come, and those have always been his thing and just weren't there for the first 3 months this year. So hoping those can kind of hang on a little bit. Neil, any additional thoughts on this one, or should I move along to trade number 4 that already happened?
Just real quickly, I'm curious to see how. So Landry Shamet and then Wilson Chandler. I know neither one have been much fantasy assets so far. I know in the past Chandler has been okay. I wonder if that. I know he's looked not very good at all this year in Philadelphia, but I do wonder, because he's so depressed right now, if he's sticking around and if they give him time, is he worth like a flyer in a deeper league? So that's one guy I would maybe throw a lottery ticket at.
Shamet hit my list as well. And actually, so did Chandler. If he turns, because there's 2 gears with Chandler. One is when he thinks he's sort of a lead dog, and you saw that in Denver. They might need that actually in Clipperland for down the stretch. Now, he's a little overweight. Obviously, the mid-body injuries have taken their toll throughout the years. But Shamet, I wish his stat set was better, because there's been a lot of stretches in Philly where you look at him and you go, this guy can play, but is the stat set going to be there for value?
So we wait. Washington, Chicago. This was an interesting one that broke yesterday. Washington involved in a couple of trades. We'll start with the Otto Porter one. Porter to the Bulls for Bobby Portis, not to be confused with Bobby Porter or Otto Portis. Otto Porter for Bobby Portis and Jabari Parker. Where to even begin with this madness? And I guess we do have to bring up the other half of this stuff. Washington also sent Markieff Morris to the Pelicans for Wesley Johnson in a move that is seemingly more of a salary thing than anything else. I believe it got them under the luxury tax this year. And then I saw a whole bunch of stuff popping around on the internet about Markieff Morris also being a Clutch Sports client. I don't know if that's going to play a role in anything going on in the future, but all right, let's set this down. Washington now no longer has injured Markieff Morris. Seems unlikely that Dwight Howard is going to play at any point this year, but they did just bring in a chucking center in Bobby Portis and a chucking power forward in Jabari Parker, and sent off a guy who was at times afraid to take shots around his teammates, the very efficient Otto Porter. Brew, I'll come to you first on this one. What now? Let's start with Washington. What's left, and who's going to play?
Well, I mean, that deep, heavy pause right there.
Yeah, well, deep breaths are encouraged on a 4-hour live show, by the way.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I guess there's like winners and losers in the sense that we've figured out who Washington's guys are. Tomas Satoransky is one of their guys. Bradley Beal is one of their guys. Jeff Green is one of their guys. Ben Standig, local reporter, said that he was off the table for the trade deadline, which is great because he's usually worth a first-round pick. Trevor Ariza is one of their guys. So that clears up, at least for those guys, what's their future looking like, and that you feel good about. And there's not a lot of news there. But Thomas Bryant, I think, is probably the first name that comes to mind for a lot of hoop ball owners. Is a little bit slow lately. Really their only true center, unless you want to count Jan Mahimi, who can only play a few minutes per game. Can't really play that many games in a row. Is Scott Brooks going to relent and let him have minutes? Brooks is this old school, played Kendrick Perkins in the playoffs guy. And, it's really up in the air, I think, if he's going to have a breakout season or a breakout last third of the season, or if he's going to just sort of sit around top 125, top 100, top 80 value. And, so we'll keep an eye on that. I added Wes Johnson to my list of people to watch. And I don't know if he's even in Washington's plans after this trade or what, but he so fits the definition of what a Scott Brooks veteran would be. He could theoretically get some minutes. Portis, I think he gets pulled back. He had an amazing leash in Chicago, just chucking. And I don't think you're the new guy on a Scott Brooks team and you get that kind of leash. He'll do his thing. He's going to push the issue, but he might find 22 minutes per game in his future. Jabari Parker is the interesting piece here. I don't think he'll go anything more than late round value.
I just like that you called Jabari Parker an interesting piece. That was an unexpected turn to this year.
Well, I mean, because look, he's obviously not good. It's a lot of that's injury related, but a lot of it's also the way he approaches the game. And he's getting, you go to that, you get traded, he got that big deal, which was obviously dumb, but you get traded and the shine wears off and you sort of just sitting there, man, I'm in Washington now and I ain't got a role, so maybe he gets his butt in gear and can give late round value. And they certainly need just players to play minutes. They're thin everywhere. They get a little bit more crowded with mediocre players in the front court, but I think he can actually put up late round numbers in 24 minutes per game, just scoring and rebounding. And if the build fits your team, I think you can squint and see some argument there. I'm not picking him up, but
so none of your weekly moves. If we're going to play the weekly moves game,
no, and not really even in a 14 team league would I be focused on him.
What about how Portis had a little more leash in Chicago, although his minutes got yanked around a bit by Jim Boylan. Also, you think his outlook is now poorer than it was before, or about the same?
I just want to hang on there. I've got Portis in a lot of places. He was underdrafted, and then the injury hit, and everything sort of spiraled out of control from there. He can be a top 90 guy pretty easily, and this could be the type of situation where a sort of young, healthy-ish, now that he's recovered from the injury, player gets in there and just cleans up the mess that is Washington. So I want to wait and see. I'm gonna, unless I've got Jahlil Okafor, sitting out there somehow on a waiver wire. I think that's probably the bigger name right now that I'm looking at coming out of this trade deadline, though he's not available in any of my leagues, but might be in yours.
Neil, additional thoughts on all this Washington Wizards stuff?
Yeah, there's so much variance with Parker and Portis. I could see them going anywhere from getting in Brooks's doghouse and not playing, or getting free reign and just going nuts like they have in the past. But because of that, I am not picking either of them up. I am worried that they might fall out of favor pretty quickly on that team. So the one guy I do trust, as Brewski said, was Jeff Green. He seems to have Scott Brooks's confidence. So if he's out there, pick him up. He might be still in my leagues, but mine kind of shallow. Thomas Bryant, I had dropped just because, not because of his talent, but because he just seemed to be getting jerked around by Brooks. Last night had a great game, of course, after I dropped him. But we'll see if these two guys impact Bryant as well, and how Brooks is going to play it out. I guess my bottom line is I trust Green. The other three, I'm just not certain anymore.
Anything to take away from the other teams involved in this stuff? Neil, I'll come back to you on that one. Does Markieff Morris get healthy enough to play in New Orleans? Do you think he gets flipped? Otto Porter, I mean, he's owned in every league, but what's your outlook on those two guys?
Yeah, I think Porter basically stays the same going into Chicago. I don't see much of a difference in his stat set. I think he'll fit right in. He might be this. I was trying to talk with Adrian last night about, is he the second most talented player there now? Where does he rank in that totem pole? But as far as fantasy stat sets, I think he pretty much holds the same. Markieff Morris, I just don't trust because of his injuries. And then we'd have to see what New Orleans is doing today before I even think about that.
Bottom of the hour, so I'd like to take a moment to thank everybody that's listening so far, and there are a lot of you that have already found the show in the first half hour. This is, of course, Hoop Ball's 2019 Trade Deadline live show. We'll be running starting a half an hour ago until 1 in the afternoon Pacific time. So another 3.5 hours on this bad boy. Wanted to ask everybody that's tuned in so far if you could give us a follow on Twitter. At Hoopball Fantasy is the blurb feed and all news coming from Hoopball. I am at Dan Besbris, DanBesbris. You can see it on your screen. At Ball with Neil, if you'd like to give Neil a follow, and at Aaron Brewski, my guest so far. We will have over the remainder of this show, we got quite a few folks on this thing. We've got Brandon Marcus, Micah Patria, Vince Miracle, Scott Bogman, Hank Aaron, Joe Sarvati, JC De Leon, Corbin Ford. They're all coming up over the remaining 3.5 hours. And please, since you did find the show on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. All of our podcasts that we do, every single one of them, gets ported to our YouTube feed. So you can get our daily fantasy shows. I have one. Neil has one as well. We have some team shows that get posted here. It's a nice little stopping point if you're not into subscribing to 15 different shows on your phone. Just the YouTube page, our Hoopball page on YouTube, will have all of that stuff. And the show, of course, is presented by Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. You can see their logo on your screen as well. Their website is hawaiianisles.com. They are also on Twitter at HI Kona Coffee, which is sweet. I have a coffee mug. I got to ask you guys, Brew, I think you said you were going for a double shot before coming on this morning. You got that brew going?
It's rough right now, Dan. I do have the brew going. I poured 2 cups in here, and I've already had 2 this morning.
So basically what you're saying is if your camera turns off for about 90 seconds at some point, it's because you're going to fill up your cup.
Slide down.
Yeah, I was going to say, because Brew's not wearing any pants and he needs to get another cup of coffee.
We don't want to have another incident, Dan.
Yeah, when are we getting an HR department here at Hoopball?
Oh, soon apparently.
Please, no HR department. None of us will have jobs in a week. What else we got going on? Brew, am I forgetting anything promotable? We got our premium stuff, I guess.
The premium stuff is really cheap right now. It's designed to get people in the door. Obviously, you don't get the full benefit for the whole season, but it's $7.99 right now. That carries you through your fantasy playoffs. And it's a really important time. You're going to get this type of analysis from our premium crew, and it's just an incredible group of voices. So you're going to get all sorts of opinions. You get nightly pickup advice. We've got some DFS stuff from John Schifferly, a lot of tools that you can use. So we want to get people in the door, show them exactly how much value we offer. So next year you can start off at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. I wanted to mention, by the way, that our good buddy Glenn over at Hawaiian Isles offered up a 15% code, and I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, let's turn that thing on. I don't know exactly how soon it'll be active, but the code is going to be HOOPBALL, HOOPBALL. You can get 15% off your orders at hawaiianisles.com starting when he sees my email, but I think it's 6:30 over there right now. 7:30? Are they 3 hours behind during daylight saving time or 2?
I think so.
Okay.
3 hours.
It's early.
3 hours.
It's early over there, so it's probably not turned on yet, but I'm thinking by the end of this bad boy, Hoopball will be the code. You can get some sweet goodies over there. They've also got their single-serve cups, and we'll tell you more about that later on in our trade deadline special. Let's segue back into some of the trades that have happened over the last couple of days. Those were, by all accounts, the larger ones. There was I'll call it medium-sized trade. Phoenix and Miami. Phoenix sending Ryan Anderson to the Heat in this... I think I speak for all of us when I say we had forgotten that he was still anywhere. And Miami sending Tyler Johnson and Wayne Ellington to Phoenix. And then the report coming out that Phoenix was looking to buy out Wayne Ellington and keep Tyler Johnson because he's got another $20 million on his contract. Neil, this was an interesting one. I mean, kudos to the Heat, I guess, for getting out from underneath the Tyler Johnson contract, but they picked up the Ryan Anderson contract. And what did they save themselves? Like a couple million in this thing? I guess I'm just glad that the Heat thinned the herd by one player.
Yeah, exactly. We need a little more thinning, though, to really get some clarity there. But yes, Tyler Johnson, I guess he's the most interesting piece to talk about. We're wondering who Phoenix would get for their point guard for the rest of the season, if anyone, and it seems to be him. I have always liked him when he has sort of a lead role in Miami. He seems to produce decently at a low-end value in terms of fantasy stat set. So that's kind of where I'm projecting him in Phoenix. Probably somewhere around 1 to 120 would be my guess. And then obviously the other players don't don't really show up on the radar. Yeah, that's my thought on that trade.
Brew, what are you thinking?
I think it's hilarious. They're looking for a point guard and they can't get a real point guard. Like, why are they so bad at this?
Yeah, get a point guard, Phoenix. Come on.
I am Phoenix Suns' biggest fan. Just throw that out there. Mr. Positivity over here.
I mean, I feel like they've done better. They've done significantly better this year than the last like 3 or 4, right?
They lucked into something, Dan. They tried to not get Kelly Oubre. They tried, they got hung up over Marshawn and Dylan Brooks. I mean, but hey, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
I know people have made the Johnson joke as well. Miami has 2. They had Tyler and James Johnson. So maybe is it possible they wanted James Johnson and Tyler's going to show up at their doorstep?
Well, James Johnson had a game the other night. I'll say that. It wouldn't be surprising if they said, "Oh, this guy's really good. We should pick him up." And it sucks. James Johnson just never has been the player that he once was after the sports hernia injury, and everything's sort of just fallen off for him. And but as far as Tyler Johnson goes, he goes to a place where there's obviously not as many good players, but the Suns are not that bad now. So it's not like he goes to just a really bad team, say like Memphis. They're going to give him the same type of run I think he had in Miami. I don't think there's anything really going on there. Maybe some late round value. Maybe it does take a little bit of the shine off of somebody like a Mikal Bridges, like a Kelly Oubre, just because there aren't as many touches to go around. Though Mikal, such low usage, definitely not off that bandwagon. Definitely still leading that bandwagon. What a pickup for hoopball owners. A lot of people doubted Mikal Bridges. We did not. He's giving you late or probably mid-round value and not really doing anything. He's at his lowest value that he will be at for the rest of his career, probably. Just a great fantasy stat set, Chris Middleton like. So as I get a notice from the great Mike Pandador that I've made a mistake in my Atlanta Hawks article, I'm going to now segue to you guys. Now I have to update something.
So I didn't really, I know I've been a little shy about giving my own opinion on this thing so far. It's mostly just to save my voice, but I will throw in that my wonder here is, where does Wayne Ellington end up? Does he fall into a place where a team desperately needs a shooter? I mean, the Lakers, and we'll talk about the Reggie Bullock trade here in just a few minutes. Lakers desperately need floor spacers. This was like the most obvious thing that anyone could have ever predicted. They signed a whole bunch of guys that can't really shoot and needed the ball in the offseason, and everybody said, well, what could go wrong? And clearly what could go wrong is that open three-pointers are not going into the basket, and so they traded for Reggie Bullock, and I'm sure there are going to be a couple of suitors for Wayne Ellington. But I saw a tweet, and it's always tough to know how many of these things flashing by your Twitter timeline are real. But someone had mentioned that they had talked to an old buddy of Wayne Ellington, who I think is from the Philadelphia area, and that he said going back to L.A. was his hope in all of this. And I guess we'll see how that turns out. Neil, am I crazy in thinking that Phoenix should be able to get like a second rounder for Wayne Ellington? I like that dude.
Oh gosh, no. I think he could be a nice piece to a team that's trying to contend for sure, like a Terrence Ross type piece. So I think he should be worth something on the trade market. LA is obviously one team that you mentioned. I'm trying to think who else you might take him, but I think he will get moved for some future asset.
I think a lot of teams. So this is. And this is not really a trade question, I guess. This is more just a philosophical thing. Teams are seemingly hesitant to just make the future second rounder for half a year rental move these days, because the buyout market has become so large. All of these bad teams that sign veterans with the expectation that maybe they can move them, it hasn't been that much of it lately. And that James Ennis deal, by the way, it sounds like it's just for a second round swap, and there's a lot of cash consideration trades going on where teams are able to take actual dollar bills from another club, and then it doesn't go against that club's luxury tax. We're seeing a lot of non-trades happening, maybe because of the buyout market. Brew, I don't know if you've been able to adjust what you've got going on over there on whatever was happening with the Hawks. But is this something that can be rectified moving forward? I know this is not really a fantasy question, but it's something that's been gnawing on me a little bit.
We're talking about the timing of the trade deadline and the buyout market, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the buyout market, I think there's actually more clamoring right now for something to be addressed with the buyout market, because it's essentially just free agency for good teams. And I don't know, you probably have to get somebody that's better at the cap to really weigh in on what could sort of soften that market a little bit. The trade, I think actually we probably will see an adjustment to the trade deadline, maybe early in All-Star weekend. It's hard if you wait. I think you really do players and teams that acquire these new guys a disservice, because they don't have as much time to get acclimated. All-Star weekend turns into a little bit of a mess, but it's an unavoidable mess at this point. Right now, you got players that are getting pulled out of games during the middle of games, and you've got a lot of DNPs right now because players are being held out for the trade deadline. So maybe the happy medium there is going back to a deadline that's maybe in the middle of All-Star weekend. But I don't know. Maybe it's a beautiful mess, that we have all this stuff going on. I think if you sign up to play in the NBA and you're, obviously, whether you're an owner or a player, this is kind of what you signed up for. And, the little bit of distraction and a little bit of chaos, it's good for fans. I mean, this is the most popular time of the year for our website, for the NBA at large. Fortunes are changing. Oh, by the way, Buddy Hield plus 450 in the 3-point shootout, Dan. I see my profit margin dwindling, eh?
I know. We'll get in on that. So you like Buddy Hield in the 3-point contest, huh? We can talk a little gambling here for a sec.
I honestly, if there was one player in the league other than Steph, who you got to knock the king off the crown, or knock the crown off the king. He I think would probably be number one. If my life was on the line, who would I want taking a 3-point shot? Buddy Hield would be number 2.
Didn't Devin Booker win that joint last year?
Yeah, Devin Booker also scored 70 points in a basketball game.
All right, fair enough. Neil, what are your thoughts?
Fair enough is what Dan says to me when I don't make any sense.
We got a long day ahead of us, guys. I'm holding it together over here. 2/3 of our crew right now is under the weather. Brew, are you healthy at least? One of us?
I don't know, man. We've been grinding for so long, and 80-hour weeks. This week is always, there's so much to keep up with.
Yeah,
I'm hanging in there, Dan.
All right, let's talk Reggie Bullock. I think I was going to say that at the start of this thing. Reggie Bullock to the Lakers for Svi Mikhailiuk. I had to YouTube that.
Is that really how it goes?
Mm-hmm. I had a YouTube video, him saying it.
Can we get that one more time?
Svi Mikhailiuk. And I think his first name is Sviatoslav, but nobody really calls him that. So, broadcasters get weird about pronunciation. I dug in deep on that bad boy. This one, Neil, I'll come to you first. This one feels like, just from a reality standpoint, a really nice trade for the Lakers. Trade a young guy who hasn't really figured out the NBA game yet for a more seasoned player. Not that Reggie Bullock is an old guy or anything, but he's a really good 3-point shooter that can function at the NBA level. Good trade for the Lakers, yes. I think we can all agree on that. Any fantasy relevance, Neil?
I would like to think so. I thought he was going to have fantasy relevance in Detroit. So it's hard for me to think he comes right into LA and just becomes relevant. Obviously, playing with LeBron will make him better, as it tends to make most rotational players better. So let's assume nothing moves in LA. This Pelicans thing is just a ruse and no one goes anywhere. If he isn't slotted in, I'm going to have to see how much they play him versus other players. I don't know if he's guaranteed to all of a sudden, chuck up a bunch of shots and play a lot of minutes. I would hope that's the case. So I would take a flyer on him, but I think I would temper my expectations a bit, because there's so many other talents around him.
He's a no on the would you use a weekly move on him guy?
He's a maybe.
Way to toe the line, Neil.
I know. I have to see what else happens today. I guess. How about that?
Fair enough. Brew, are you using a weekly move on him?
Who is him? I was doing stuff.
Reginald Bullock
That's why I didn't remember the name, because it's Reginald Bullock.
Yeah.
He's had a good year. He's pretty automatic, from three. It's where does he fit in after whatever happens with Anthony Davis is the big question there.
All right, let's talk Anthony Davis for a minute then. I know that there's a Thon Maker for Stanley Johnson trade that's gnawing at everyone. They really want to know how that one's going to shake out. And a Malachi Richardson to the Sixers trade that we haven't covered so far. But I think those can wait a second to talk Anthony Davis. I have thoughts on this one, and I know I've, again, been a little bit quiet so far in this show, vocal saving here. To me, this now once you get to trade deadline morning, and we're 2 hours and 13 minutes from the actual deadline, it doesn't seem like the Pelicans had really ever any desire to move AD before the deadline. It seemed like they were just trying to figure out what everybody's best offer would be and then take that in their pocket to the summer. What I tweeted yesterday, and I got sort of a mixed bag of notes on it, but I think everybody can mostly agree, is that by not making a move now for basically the entire Lakers roster, the Pelicans are gambling that either one of two things will happen. Number one, Boston will give them Jason Tatum in a deal, or two, the Knicks win the lottery. That's sort of the two things that they're one of those two things. If one of those two things happens, those teams can provide a better package to the Lakers. If the Knicks do not win the lottery, if Boston refuses to give up Jason Tatum, the Lakers' offer from right now probably ends up being the best one that they see. So there is a risk in not doing anything right now where, if Tatum isn't involved and the Knicks don't win the lottery, the offer could actually come back down a little bit. Brew, I'm interested in your thoughts on how this whole thing has been shaking out, because it seems like it's mostly just been a battle of leaks and there was really no traction ever.
What is Boston giving in addition to say Jason Tatum in a deal?
I don't know. They have so many things that I can't even keep track of it.
I think everybody just sort of has assumed that Boston, can make the better deal here. But are we really sure about that? Like, Jason Tatum, don't get me wrong, be a really good player and could be a number one scoring option, provide you, serviceable defense, if not above average defense, as he continues to learn the game, and could be really good. But how much better is he than, say, Kyle Kuzma? How much better is he than Lonzo Ball? I'm not a huge Lonzo Ball guy, but I wonder, what are we really talking about here in terms of separation? And then what is Boston working with in draft picks? I know LA's draft picks, they offer 4 first-rounders and 2 second-rounders. And when I read that, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, you'll know better than I, but those are all late first-rounders as long as LeBron James is there, right?
Yeah, but because it would have to be every other year, if they did do 4 firsts, and I think that was the goal for the Pels, was to stretch it over basically 7 years. And I know I can do math. 4 times 2 is 8, but if there's the first year is 1, then the 3rd, 5th, and 7th would be the next. To me, if I'm the Lakers, I now start screening the Pelicans' calls. You made your bet at this point. We're walking away from it. Unless you're calling to say the offer is done, we're not talking anymore. I don't know. I know that this story is sort of beaten into a pulp a little bit, but
I guess the Memphis pick is pretty nice. It's protected for 1 through 8 this year, so it's probably not conveying. 1 through 6 in 2020, unprotected in 2021. You're banking on this franchise not being good for a while. So I guess that would be a very good one. The Philly or Sacramento pick, Sacramento's pick is looking, like it could be middle of the road, for 2019. With that being said, to me, it seems like, yes, the Memphis pick is probably something that if you're looking at picks, that's the one they're honing in on. The Clippers pick, yeah, who knows if they're getting Kawhi Leonard and, or whoever they might be getting with Steve Ballmer running the show. I think I'm still a little thrown off by, I do agree that Boston, by virtue of the pick, by virtue of, if they were to say Tatum and Brown, or something in that ballpark, we're starting to combine players. and make some things happen. I think, yeah, they could probably do better than the Lakers offer. But here's what you're going to go through if you're New Orleans. If you wait, you're going to go through Anthony Davis can't play. If they put him on the court after the trade deadline, somebody's got to either get fired or they're just dumb. Like, it's one or the other. And the crazy thing is this is a football organization, and football teams do this stuff all the time.
Well, couldn't the league kind of apply some pressure to them? It sounds like AD wants to play regardless of where he is after the deadline. I know Adam Silver wants to make sure that the best guys in the league are not being rested. Could they sort of put a little elbow into him?
I don't think so, especially after what's happened with them historically with what David Stern did to them in the Chris Paul deal. I think people would lose their you-know-what. And
it's right. It's a family show.
You can't tell a franchise, all right, this guy's making a power play to leave, and you now have to put that at risk and possibly lose everything. They just had DeMarcus Cousins go down to an Achilles injury last year, and what would that do to Anthony Davis's trade value? I mean, I don't think they can force him to play, and I think he's just saying the right things of, I do want to play. I don't know that he has a ton of downside in playing, because maybe basketball players look at this and say, hey, I could get injured walking across the street. But
yeah, just look at John Wall. Obviously, nothing fishy there. He just fell in his house and tore his Achilles. That's anything can happen whenever. I don't buy the story, by the way, if that wasn't immediately evident. Neil, I'm going to give you a chance on this one as well, and then we'll try not to talk about Anthony Davis unless something actually happens. What do you think is the scenarios here? What are you looking for on that front?
With Anthony Davis playing or not? Is that what are we looking for? Is that the question?
Yeah, just all of the above. Brew and I went back and forth a little bit, and I didn't give you a chance to say anything.
Well, I mean, it is a good question about how much more talented. That's what I was thinking. Tatum is versus a Ball versus a Kuzma. Tatum obviously had that incredible playoff run last year. Since that time, he's looked pretty good in Boston this year, but obviously it's a much different construction to allow him to shine. So I don't know if he individually is a lot better. Obviously you want the best piece back, but I think he and Brown may be together to put a better package together. I just don't know if they're going to get that from Boston. So that's how I feel on that front. I don't think Ainge is going to give both those guys.
Jumping in on you, Neil. We got our first story of the day. Breaking news from a real Woj account. The first bomb has dropped. Nico Mirotic has been traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. Interesting. So Ersan Ilyasova was not a good enough Nico Mirotic, so they brought in the real Nico Mirotic to fill that role. Brew, immediate thoughts from this one. Going to the big dog first.
I put this in the article. Mirotic's game travels well. Whether it travels well to Milwaukee, I think it probably is neutral. He's not going to get the big minutes that he was previously getting. He's not going to get that sort of unfettered run and unfettered touches that he got in New Orleans, but he's been good in minimal minutes in the past. So I think if you're bringing Mirotic in, you probably do want him playing at least 22 minutes per game, if not something in the 26 to 28 range. Obviously that's got to come with Giannis playing, Giannis starting essentially at power forward. It's got to come as a backup there. And Brook Lopez, you might see him take a haircut in some minutes. His only backup right now is Christian Wood. So I don't think you go small ball with, Mirotic at center, but you might see Giannis at center lineups to sort of make up that balance there. 22 to 26 minutes is easy, and I think that's the easy top 100 value for him. It's not what we wanted. We had a lot of Nico here. It's been a great start to the year. It was a great draft selection. I'm not going to question whether or not we should have made that pick. He'll cruise, and who knows if things break his way, he could always, do better than that as well.
I mean, I think we sort of have to say and you said it too, there's a hit coming here. There's just, you said no unfettered access. He was a top 30 guy when he was healthy this year, which was pretty amazing in that zero defense, all offense New Orleans Pelicans system. He was playing 29 minutes a game for New Orleans before he got hurt. So even if you shave, like you said, Brew, 20% off of that, he's still a reasonable guy. But much like Tobias Harris, this is a downgrade, right?
Oh, absolutely. Unfortunately, I don't think he gets in the starting lineup and comes off the bench and plays more of that six-man role in terms of scoring and leading that unit. But I would have to say his stats go down a little bit. I wouldn't panic on him though, for sure. I think he'll be his like Brewski says, his game seems to be very amenable to almost any situation. So I think he'll be just a little bit, maybe a round or two down.
I'm laughing at the opposite side of this thing. The piece is going back to the Pelicans. We now have that information as well. It's Jason Smith and Stanley Johnson. So Stanley Johnson, I mean, I don't even know if he even touched it down in Milwaukee before getting shipped off to a new location. It wasn't entirely clear what his role was going to be on that team behind their other set of sort of tall guards and wings. And now it appears that his role is to just go elsewhere. So I don't care what anybody thinks about Jason Smith. I want to focus on Nico for Stanley Johnson in this trade for the most part. I mean, Jason Smith feels like a guy who could very easily be bought out, although I admit I don't know his contract situation. Okay, Brew, coming back to you on the situation here. Thon Maker, remember, he got shipped out. That was one of the few trades we actually hadn't talked about yet, was Thon Maker for Stanley Johnson, and now it's probably a good thing we didn't. So Thon Maker went to Detroit. Stanley Johnson came back to the Bucks. Now he turns around and goes to New Orleans for Mirotic. We're hoping for, Brew, like you said, 24-ish minutes for Nico. What about Stanley Johnson in New Orleans now? I'm assuming that there are going to be some picks involved in this as well. I can't imagine, I guess Nico, what, was there was another year on his thing? I got to check his contract situation as well. Brew, does Stanley Johnson serve any kind of role in New Orleans? Because that team can turn a lot of not good fantasy players into useful ones.
Yeah, Kendrick Williams has had a pretty good run there, and he now probably gets canceled out by this. And whether they keep Kendrick Williams is going to have a lot to do with what they get back in return. So I think one way or another, Stanley Johnson had a shot in Detroit, and we saw what he's capable of, and it's not much. The only way he gets loose is if somehow New Orleans really, really gels with him. They don't take back any players. Maybe they sit on AD and they go with this really skeleton rotation. He might have late round value. Back to your question about, do you use a weekly moves limit on him? I don't think I would, even in a 14-team league right now.
Neil, any thoughts on Stanley Johnson? Does he carve out a role? Does he not?
I was really hoping he would be in Milwaukee and Budenholzer could coach him up. So yeah, I don't think so, unfortunately. This is I wonder if this is his last stop. Anyway, he hasn't unfortunately proved himself in Detroit before, and I don't think he's worth a shot this year. Perhaps in future years. We'll see.
We have a shift change coming up here in just a few seconds. So, Neil, I want to remind everybody once again, you can follow Neil on Twitter at BallWithNeil, BallWithnEil. That's an I in that name instead of an A, so remember to get the spelling right, at BallWithNeil. He's the host of Hoop Ball's Box Score Breakdown, along with our good pal Adrian Benjamins, who's working right now like a normal human being. And you can check that out. That comes out every night before you guys go to sleep. That's a show that focuses on the box score, readings, whatever comes out fantasy-wise from the games happening that night. It's a fantastic show, and it is an incredible piece to add to your fantasy analysis. Neil, outstanding work all season long. I'm sure I'll talk to you real soon.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Enjoy the day.
Yep, we got some new friendly faces popping on here now, so I want to make sure that I'm introducing folks appropriately. The great Hank Aaron, always well-dressed, always the best dressed on the show. We got Coach, we got JC. Hank, what's up, man?
What's up, man? How are you? Coming in, seeing some interesting stuff happening right now.
Yeah, right on time. Right on time. JC, what's up, my man?
How's it going?
We are hanging in there. We got our first nice break of the day. And the Coach, what's up, Coach? Nice tie as well over there.
Thank you, sir. How's everybody doing?
Oof. Well, we, the jokes abound that I have a recreational vehicle parked outside Nico Mirotic's house, and now I got to drive it to the polar vortex. I guess that's over. I guess that part is done. I'll ask you guys right now, since the news just broke, and this is the fun thing to get right into. Coach, I'll come straight back to you on this thing. Nico to Milwaukee, Stanley Johnson to New Orleans. What we have settled on so far, seemingly, and you can let me know if you agree or disagree, is that Stanley Johnson does get a boost, but probably not enough to be a standard 12-team kind of guy. And for Nico Mirotic, he takes a hit, but probably does still remain a 12-team guy, even if the numbers are a little bit lower. Agree or disagree? Going to Coach first on this one.
I agree. I think Mirotic is a great ad for the Bucks. I mean, they're really playing great ball. They've got a great chance to come out of the East. Mirotic is another terrific ad. If he stays healthy, he may have some good fantasy value. I think he'll be in their rotation. They'd like to play a lot of small ball, and he'd fit right into that. And as far as Stanley Johnson goes on the other side, I wouldn't touch that at all, because obviously there are so many dominoes to fall for the Pelicans. It's just wide open. So sit back and watch the Pelicans. But if you don't have Mirotic, or if he somehow was on a waiver wire because of the injury, he's worth an ad, I think.
We're hearing, by the way, that New Orleans, and this is not fantasy relevant, but it sounds like the Pels will get as many as 4 second-round picks in this deal. That's an awful lot of darts to throw at a board late in the draft, but you never know. I mean, guys like Nikola Jokic comes out of the second round. So you catch lightning in a bottle with even one of those things, it ends up being a worthwhile move. Rotating back through all of my cavalry here that just came in. JC, thoughts on the Nico Stanley Johnson trade we just saw come down?
I like it. Anytime, Giannis is one of his big weaknesses, obviously, is 3-point shooting. And so you add somebody who kind of takes that burden off of him. I think it's only going to boost their overall team. They can stretch the floor out. They can sort of they love length. And Mirotic at 6'10" is just another really tall guy in their lineup, to where they can even throw a small lineup and just have a bunch of guys who are 6'9" and above in their small lineup.
And Hank, host of the Monday Evening Premium Show, thoughts on this trade, and then obviously anything else that's come up so far, because we sort of plodded our way through the 11 deals that had already happened.
Yeah, I agree with most of what was said. The other thing I like, if I had Mirotic, if I'm adding him, is that I think there's a higher likelihood he plays down the stretch as well. So if he was on a tanking team, there's a better chance he wouldn't have been playing. So I think it helps his fantasy value, even if it decreases his per game output, increases the chances that he actually plays.
That's a good point, actually, because my mind goes immediately to roto stuff. Brew, I know you're more of a roto guy as well. We have to also think about this from the head-to-head perspective, which is now you've basically guaranteed that Mirotic is going to play in your head-to-head playoffs. So even if the production dips, if you're in a good place right now, the fear of him resting down the stretch likely goes away. Let me give everybody a quick rundown here. Our new guests, and Hank, I have to admit, I always forget if you're on Twitter or not. Do you have a Twitter handle?
I do have a Twitter handle. It's Hank_Aaron2.
Hank_Aaron2. I'm going to make sure to retweet that the next time I'm not talking. At JC DeLeon, DeLeon1 is the Twitter handle for JC, and at Joe Sarvadi, Sarvadi, who he goes by Coach. Brew, you've been able to hang out there for a couple of minutes, so I'm gonna pull you back in from the fray. We're sort of finally getting things going here. This feels like the beginning of a bunch of things that's going to come out of New York, or out of New Orleans, excuse me. Right? This can't be the only thing.
No, I don't think so. No, I mean, we're 2 hours from the actual deadline, and a lot of times we don't even hear about the deals until 30 minutes after the deadline. So with this much movement and a weird parity in the league this year, obviously the Warriors are the Warriors and everybody else is in a different league. But in the East, you've got 4 teams that are heavy hitters now. Philly geared up. They stocked up and got some weapons, or got a weapon in Tobias Harris. What does Toronto do? I mean, I'm really interested to hear, does anything happen with the Kyle Lowry stuff. You got Mike Conley, Marc Gasol sitting out there, 2 huge pieces that can really move the needle for a lot of teams. So no, I would, let's go over under. I'm gonna say go 12 more deals.
Oh, between now and noon?
Yeah, I'm crazy. Let's go 12.
Holy hell. I don't I don't have the energy for that madness. All right, well, we're waiting for other stuff to sort of float through these things, because I'm sure we're going to keep getting information, and this will likely be the first ball to drop. Looping back to some of the previous trades that we've seen shake out over the last week, Hank, I'll come to you first on this one. Some of your biggest takeaways from any of the moves so far, maybe your top couple of ads, your guys that might have made a drop list for you, guys that make the I have weekly moves and I'm going to use them list. That's the way I've been trying to make the cutoff here on these shows. Would you use a weekly move? And if so, who are the names that have jumped out over the last week since we started seeing these trades begin?
One guy that I traded for was Reggie Bullock. I think on the Lakers it's going to be crowded, so there's a decent chance it doesn't pan out. But if he's able to get a role, if they make another move and clear up a few players and open up some time for him, I think he's got some potential playing next to LeBron. So he's somebody I went for. Obviously not somebody you would drop, but Tobias Harris, I think his value really took a big hit. And production is going to go down. And also if you're in playoff format, the playoff schedule went down too. So I think Tobias Harris was a big loser in all the trades for fantasy purposes.
You know, Brew, I forgot to ask you something, and then JC, I'm going to come to you on the week of deals. The great Aaron Brewski, of course, at Aaron Brewski on Twitter, if you'd like to give him a follow as well. I'm going to check on everybody's head position in this show as I make sure I got all my windows figured out. Are we assuming, that there's still a chance, actually, that Stanley Johnson doesn't play for the Pelicans? It seems like his deal is actually expiring. I was unaware of that also. What about the opening that this creates in New Orleans with Mirotic leaving town? Does this now, we've seen the big men on the New Orleans side. Jahlil Okafor has obviously done more with Anthony Davis out, and Mirotic and Julius Randle. Check Diallo's been seeing more minutes. Does this free anybody up for the stretch run at the power forward spot in New Orleans? And again, that's for Brew.
I mean, nobody good. Solo Hill might get some nominal minutes there and be a big body that gets in the way of some of the smaller fours in the league. Kendrick Williams maybe can slide down and play a little bit. That's asking him a lot of him. Markieff Morris, can he get over his neck injury? That's an open question. And Markieff Morris theoretically could be a beneficiary there, where he, is healthier than people presume.
Good point. Good point on Markieff. He's been out, and he is, by all accounts, more a power forward than a center. He actually slots into that Nico spot reasonably well. I think the Wizards were hoping to have him back by the All-Star break, right?
That I think that was iffy at best. They don't care in New Orleans. Like, this is a football team running a basketball team. They could throw 4 guards out and, Jahlil Okafor, and I think they don't care at this point. If what Brian Windhorst is saying is true about them just wanting to drag the Lakers along and give them, a taste of their own medicine, like, this is a franchise that does not care. They are going to play whatever they want to play. And Julius Randle, he's the big piece there. He's got a lot on the line in this trade deadline. He's either going to go completely nuts for the last third of the season, or he would get, traded to a situation with good players and see a severe decrease in fantasy value because his game does not travel well. So, I don't know. It's a little too early to see, but definitely without Mirotic, and if Markieff Morris isn't playing, you've just got a gaping hole there. That's why Jahlil Okafor was such a great pickup a couple weeks ago.
All right, so we've got another thing, although this one seems less needle moving. It sounds like Nick Stauskas and Wade Baldwin are being moved to the Pacers now. I don't know the other half of this deal, so I know.
Nobody wants them.
Is that the third or fourth team Nick Stauskas has been traded to this week?
Yeah, that's a rough one.
That's a bummer. I really liked him in Houston. I like the idea of him, but... Well,
yeah,
I did too.
Not to be. The Nick Stauskas, Josh Leuenberger, who covers the Raptors, has called it the Nick Stauskas World Tour. He's on his way, and we'll find out what's going the other direction on that one, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I wanted to make sure I give JC and Coach a chance to talk about the things they've liked or disliked from the last few days of the trade deadline. JC, thoughts on guys that could be moving up in the ranks, down in the ranks? What's caught your eye over this trade deadline so far?
Yeah, the Tobias Harris thing was interesting because, I think it's going to hurt his usage, obviously. I'm curious to see how Jimmy Butler and Joel Embiid will react to it because JoJo didn't like his usage after Jimmy Butler got added there. And so now you're adding another piece. But I do think it's going to be an overall category bump for Ben Simmons because I think some of the scoring burden has been taken off of him, and I think he's going to relish in that. So I think he's going to be able to pass more. He could focus on rebounding. He could focus on defense. He for sure doesn't ever have to shoot a three now, and so I think it's gonna boost his overall play and stats.
Coach,
that's what I think, anyway.
Coach, same question.
Well, a couple of things I wanted to mention that I just thought were real relevant that we really haven't mixed into it. But I just think that it's the most interesting in what's led up to this trade deadline and what's going on right now. I think it's a real shapeshifter for the NBA. I mean, it's now becoming the haves and have-nots, where guys like Anthony Davis and even Zinger in New York can pretty much dictate, you got to trade me if you want any value. I don't care if there's a $238 million max contract waiting. I want to go have a chance to win it. And that's a little bit disturbing, I think, for the NBA and Silver. They're going to have to make some adjustments, or within no time at all, we're going to have a group of teams that are going to dominate like the Warriors, and then a group of teams that are going to be horrible like the Pelicans. So I think that's just something I want to mention because it'll be interesting to see what Silver does and how that unfolds down the stretch. As far as the deal so far, I think from a fantasy standpoint, you got to be concerned with Philly in general. I mean, you got, Reddick's a volume shooter as well. So you're going to have 5 guys on the floor that are used to leading their teams in scoring. So I would assume all of them are going to take a hit a little bit. I'd be super wary of Harris and Butler for sure, because Embiid and Simmons are going to really be at the heart of what they're doing. So I'd keep an eye on that. And then I also say today, the trade deadline day for fantasy players is the most important day other than draft day. And that is because, we're mentioning these trades, the Stauskases and all these secondhand guys, but it's important because however these guys move around, you got to see who gets bought out. Whoever sticks with their teams, though, it's going to change the rotation. Like last night on our show, we were talking about, just an odd guy to add like a Sam Decker from Washington. When we saw Keefe and Porter moving, all of a sudden you got a guy that can get 25, 28 minutes, who's a good fantasy point per minute guy. So keep an eye on all those little moves because that can shift the needle for you. But, I think in the last few minutes of the trade deadline, we're going to see some big deals come down and, keep an eye because it's first to the waiver wire and first to the trade offer, usually that gets it done for the second half.
Yeah, I forgot which NBA writer said it on Twitter, but like the big loud public trades and rumors like the Anthony Davis to the Laker thing almost never happened. The real ones are the ones that move in silence, like the Philadelphia trade happened super late at night. Porzingis came out of nowhere. Those are the trades that happen. And so, I agree with Brew in that there might be a lot of things that we don't even have on anyone's radar that might come to light.
The last thing I want to mention real quick is, I watched the Mavs game, listened to some of the inside stuff, and I think Hardaway is going to be a steal. He's going to be a mid-30 minutes guy. He wasn't mentioned much, as a big part of this deal, but Carlisle's a tendency to really pick his guys and 2 or 3 and play them a lot, and I think Hardaway will fit that bill. And I know I heard it earlier talking about Kleba and Powell, and I would be concerned there because, really Carlisle's MO with those kind of guys is let's do the rotation, let's split minutes and try to create, which is good for a winning team, but not good for fantasy. So just wanted to throw the Mavs stuff in there.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what we're covering. We're covering everything over the last week, and then anything breaking today. We just want to be the first ones to talk about it from a fantasy perspective, and I hope that we've done that now with Nico Mirotic and Stanley Johnson, and obviously the possibility of a guy like Markieff Morris moving into a little bit more relevance in New Orleans. It's a great place to be if they play you, because Alvin Gentry's offense is just crazy. I mean, we're seeing it with all these dudes that no one had heard of 3 days ago, myself included. I like to think that I know most teams about 10 deep, and I didn't know who Kendrick Williams was. Darius Miller was a name that had popped up earlier this year a little bit, but obviously Cheikh Diallo's playing well. Jaleel Okafor had been playing well. He got outplayed by Diallo in yesterday's ball game, but Frank Jackson, he's seeing some more minutes. Things are interesting in New Orleans. That's a spot where, and like I said, the game we've been playing so far today is basically, would you use a move on any of these guys? And the answer, I think, with what we've seen in this microcosm, Pelicans land so far, is no, because there's a lot of stuff that could still shake out on that front. And so we'll reassess if anything comes down the pipeline. It's hard, by the way, to do a show where you're talking and staring at Twitter at the same time, but I'm absolutely doing my best here. I do want to take a moment because I got to introduce all of you guys at 10, but I didn't remind everybody a couple of things that I'd love if folks could do. There are a lot of you watching this show right now. That number is going to continue to increase as we move towards the actual deadline, if last year was any indicator. And so to those of you that are finding Hoopball for the first time, welcome. To those of you that have been with us for the couple of years we've been in existence, it's awesome to have you watching this show again. It's a big number of you right now. But I would ask a couple things of those of you checking in for this 4-hour commercial-free fantasy deadline show. Number one, give a check out of our sponsor, Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. We talked about that during the last hour. They are on Amazon, which is probably the easiest way to find them, Amazon.com. You just search for Hawaiian Isles, and it'll pop up immediately. HawaiianIsles.com is the website, at HI Kona Coffee, if you want to follow them on Twitter. They are not just our presenting sponsors. They're also giant fantasy enthusiasts. So if you ever want to talk fantasy sports with a coffee company, we have the one for you. We're also on Twitter, all of us, and the website as well, at Hoopball Fantasy. It's right there on your screen if you're watching the live show up in the top left. Give that a follow. It's our blurb feed. It's got all of our news, all of our shows that come out at Hoopball Fantasy. And then all of the folks that have been on this podcast and will continue to be on today's show, I should say. This is not a pod, I guess. This is the real thing, guys. We're live and we exist. And I'll throw out all the Twitter handles for all of us again on today's show. I am at Dan Besbris, DanBesBris, at Aaron Bruski, Bruski is the last name, and then the cavalry that rotates through on this thing. Coach, you are at Joe Sarvati on Twitter, at JC DeLeon1, at Hank_Aaron2. You can follow our three friends here during this half-hour segment. I don't know, man. I got bodies. I got the schedule in front of me, guys, but I'm looking at so many things at the same time that I'll figure it out when we get to the bottom of the hour, who's still with us and who's not. And then, obviously, we're on YouTube right now. You're literally watching us on YouTube as I speak to you. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel for a couple of reasons. Number one, all of our shows. That includes fantasy shows, Fantasy NBA Today. That's my show, the Box Score Breakdown with Adrian and Neil. That's on our Hoopball YouTube account. You can get all of our team-specific shows are available on the YouTube channel. We got a Lakers show, a Kings show, a Nets show that are gracing the presence. Brew, you and I do live Friday shows every other week right now, where we take questions on fantasy from you guys in the chat room. I know a lot of you are typing stuff right now. Those shows end up here on YouTube, so click that subscribe button if you want to give a thumbs up. Thumbs up. You can see I am afflicted with what's known as toe thumb, but perhaps the button on YouTube is not. Give a thumbs up to today's show. We'd really appreciate it. Anything that kind of helps it continue to move up the rankings of folks just looking for stuff on YouTube right now. And I think that's all I wanted to push during this segment. But you know what? We got you guys for 4 hours, so I think I'm allowed to do a little promo stuff every once in a while. Brew, did I miss anything going on the internet while I was doing a whole bunch of promo?
I was doing a whole bunch of work. I think you did a great job, Dan.
Thanks.
You're slanging hoop ball. Good work, man.
Doing my best. Hoop-ball.com is the website. You can also check out the premium stuff by clicking on the premium tab at Hoop Ball, where you get to hang out with these three guys that we got on the podcast right now. Hank, you're hosting the Monday show weekly. JC, Coach, I think I got you guys moving around. I've got your schedule fluid, dynamic. JC, which one are you doing this week? Did you already have one?
Yeah, last night, the Wednesday show, where we mostly do box score breakdown, but with all the trades going on, we did a little bit of that too last night.
Joe, I think you were with him last night, right?
I was, yeah. We had a great wrap-up show, and then also Tuesdays are a lot of fun. We do that show more of just an open forum, just for questions, discussion, talk a little basketball, little game within the game stuff. So yeah, join us Tuesdays, Wednesdays. Join all the shows. They're informative. They're, really can get an edge with your teams. And I'd say, if you need to get over the top, you're setting a few points out. Hopefully we can make a difference for you.
I'm not going to say many things that I see flash by in the chat room, but I see one person said that I sound like Topher Grace. That's not the first time that's been said about me, by the way, in an odd twist. That one caught my eye, and I thought, somebody said that like 6 years ago. He's wealthier than I am, so that's good for him. Yeah, the premium shows are outstanding. You guys should definitely check that out. It's on a crazy low price right now. And also, by the way, our good friend Glenn with Hawaiian Isles is awake out in Hawaii. He's going to get that code set up I mentioned earlier in the show. Hoopball is the code. You get 15% off anything you buy at hawaiianisles.com. Okay, now we settle back into waiting for trade news. We don't have trade news that's coming across the desk right now, but we do have injury news, and we also let's just go that direction right now. Karis LeVert is available for the Brooklyn Nets for their game tomorrow. Jonas Valanciunas is available for the Raptors for their game tonight. Let's see. Where am I going first in this? I got so many heads I can talk to right now. Hank, I think I'm coming to you first on this bad boy. Karis LeVert's return, Jonas Valanciunas' return. What are you expecting from these two guys, short and long term? And when I say short and long term, I mean like the next couple games versus the rest of the year.
Well, I think Jonas should bounce back to what he was doing earlier in the year. Should be a 70 and 100 maybe. Low end big guy. Injury doesn't seem like it should affect his value going forward, so I think he'll be okay. LeVert is much more questionable. Is he going to be able to bounce back from the injury? I'm currently skeptical that he will, but obviously there's a lot of upside there. So if you could grab him, see what he does, short term, I'd give him a few games, see if he's going to get back to full health, see if the Nets are going to play him a lot. So I think there's more variability with him. But if you add Jonas, you'll probably lock in a solid low-end big guy moving forward.
JC, same question.
Yeah, I think it'll take some time for LeVert to get back to what he was doing. He's obviously got to get in shape, probably. But I'd be a little cautious with him. The big guys tend to kind of acclimate better when they come back, because if most of their focus is on rebounding and blocking shots and things like that, then that's sort of easier to fall into than if you're trying to score a lot like LeVert was doing. So I'd be a little cautious on LeVert, but just a little. I think he'll bounce back. Coach?
I'm sort of in the opposite camp. I say go grab LeVert if you can. When he made that injury, it looked horrific because his ankle dislocated. But the report that came out after that was there wasn't any real structural damage. His ligaments and everything were in place. So that's why he's coming back so quick. And I'll tell you, if you watched him the 10 games before that injury, he was exploding into being a great running mate for D'Angelo, and now that they have Dinwiddie down, I think LeVert's going to see a usage bump, and I think he'll come back pretty quick. As far as Val goes, that guy drives me crazy. You never know if he's going to start, come off the bench, how many minutes. Sometimes he has empty stats. Sometimes he's, big stats. So good luck, deciding on that. I think his role will be similar to the way it was the first half, though.
Brew, I was trying to buy you as much time as possible to make updates to your running trade deadline list. How'd I do? You ready to? Can I reel you back in?
Reel me in, man.
right.
I also just saw something really interesting from a source that doesn't typically break a lot of NBA news and information. It's Kenneth McMillan, contributes to Fox Sports. Jazz currently in discussions for Miami's Goran Dragic, according to league source. It looks like the Utah writers are giving it that thinky face, which you give when you don't believe what somebody's saying. But
is that the one you just texted me?
That is.
Thank you. You're keeping me. Thank you. I appreciate that, by the way. And that same thing goes for the rest of you guys. If you guys see something on Twitter that I don't, and you can confirm it's real, just jump in and tell me or text me, because I'm trying to do 95 things here. And so help is definitely appreciated. I will not be offended. They need a point guard, right? And a scoring point guard makes a lot of sense for Utah.
Right, and Mike Conley's price might be too high, and this could also just be a ruse, to shake that market up. But the thing with Miami, I wrote a little preamble about this in the Miami section of that ongoing article that I'm writing. They have to get rid of players, and they know it, I think. And the only contracts that really make sense of guys that they would want to get out of the business of is Goran Dragic. I mean, this is a guy that if you plug him in and you're looking for short-term assistance, he can be a viable starting point guard option for your team. So how much of an improvement is he going to be over Ricky Rubio? Probably incremental, but Utah's looking for incremental, I think, right now. What Miami might have to give up, I think, in order to get rid of Goran Dragic is an interesting question. And that's why I think that he could possibly work here, which is the precursor to these Miami guys possibly having value. It's kind of interesting that, Dion Waiters will never have standard league fantasy value because his stat set's not good. But, James Johnson, nobody's going to pick him up. Nobody's going to touch him. If the Heat do manage to get rid of some guys, and a lot of them, it could be those two that are the producers for the Heat as they continue to rehab their value. I'm not going to get excited about either of them. James Johnson had a really good game, but he's had about 60 bad ones prior to that. Kelly Olynyk is the guy. Ideally, if the Heat don't have players infringing on the 4 slot, maybe you can start to see the trio of him and Bam Adebayo and Hassan Whiteside, especially with Whiteside. If they decide, hey, we're out of the Whiteside business, we're just going to play him 20 minutes per game and play Bam at the 4 and play, those 3 guys, give them the 96 minutes in that bucket. Maybe Kelly Olynyk can get back on the radar, but Dragic is somebody that you might consider stashing if you really need assists or you need a point guard, a scoring point guard. But assists are usually hard to come by this time of year, and that might give him a little bump up for you.
Yeah, I if that turns into something, I like it. But obviously, we'll keep a close watch on that. It seems like a couple other sources, Brew, are starting to tweet out that discussion is in progress. I saw one tweet flash by, and I can't confirm this yet, but that Enes Kanter was hoping to sign with the Celtics if he gets bought out. We will obviously reassess that if anything becomes more official. Back to my panel here, guys. Coach, I'll loop back with you on this one. Just talking about the guys that are getting healthy, possible Goran Dragic moves. What are your feelings on some of this latest news?
Well, I saw it coming with the Heat. I mean, I think Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra are 2 of the best basketball minds in the game. However, they're in a horrible position. They really overpaid tremendously for Johnson and Dragic and the huge contract of Waiters. So they've been playing a rotation of like 12 guys. I don't think they know what they want to do other than the fact that, as you saw with Johnson last night, they're trying to dump some of these contracts. It's time for them to reset. I mean, they need to make some decisions. You can't have a rotation of 12 guys a night. So really, like I said on one of the earlier shows, be fearful of any of the Heat guys because you don't know what's going on there. You got to really see where that falls. There could be some fantastic value there once some of those guys are moved. But right now, I'd steer clear of all of them until the dust settles because I think they want to dump salary and start rebuilding for next year. So that's the advice on the Heat.
JC, if any of these things do shake out, what are you looking for?
Yeah, I think Goran to Utah is interesting. We were talking last night. I think a veteran presence will only serve to help Donovan Mitchell as his growth and things like that. I think somebody like Mirotic will kind of ease the burden on him. If you add a scoring point guard, then it's not going to be as much of a scoring burden on Mitchell. So I think that's good because that's when we were thinking it was either going to be maybe Kyle Lowry or Mike Conley. But Dragic is just as interesting. And yeah, I think Miami's in a bad way with all the really bad contracts, and I'm surprised they were able to unload some of them. Like I didn't think they'd ever get rid of that Tyler Johnson contract.
Yeah, that was a pretty good win for them. Hank, same deal. What on the rumor mill? What do you like and dislike so far?
I think the Heat are a great team to look at as the trade deadline goes because, as Brew mentioned, there's a few guys. If Bam or Kelly Olynyk, if minutes open up for either one of them, I think their value goes way up. If Derrick Jones Jr. could get a solid role in that team, he could be someone to add. So Miami is a good team to keep your eye on because they got a lot of players there that could have good value if the minutes open up for them and they shorten up the rotation a little bit. So I think they're a good team to look at. I own Canner in a few spots, so I'm looking for him to get somewhere because he's not even playing at all right now. So Canner, I'll keep my eye on. Miami Heat, I think is a good one to keep an eye on too.
Yeah, if the behind Al Horford is the final destination on the Cantor front, that's probably not a great spot for him. We are at the bottom of the hour, which means it's shift change over here. Let me check my schedule to see what we got going on. Coach and Hank, it looks like we will bid you two fine fellows farewell. Hank, you can find on Twitter at Hank_Aaron2. Coach, you can find on Twitter at Joe Sarvati. You can also check those guys out on our premium shows at Hoopball. Nightly, we have, I think, what do we got? We got one on Sunday. We got two on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We got 6 premium shows every week. For those of you that are subscribed, you get to ask questions of our pros in the YouTube chat room. They'll just tell you about your team, man. You can that's where you can go, and you can be like, all right, here's my team. I got these 15 guys. This is what I'm contemplating doing. What do I do? And you will have that question answered in real time, live on video. Premium stuff, outstanding. Coach, Hank, we will talk to you very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one.
The bodies shift, but the results remain the same. The trade deadline live special continues, and I want to welcome in Corbin Ford, who's also a host of our nightly premium shows. He's got that sweet voice. Corbin, I can see, there's his face. There's that pretty mug. What's up, my man?
Hey, happy to be on. Thanks a lot, Dan. How are you?
We are hanging in there. We still got Brewski. He's monitoring the wire. We'll be bugging him as things break. Trying my best, Brew, to give you intermittent respites here on the show. Corbin, since we do have a moment seemingly between insane trade deadline, unless something just broke that I've missed, because my Twitter is actually running behind. It's so crazy this morning. Corbin, thoughts on what we've got going on so far? Frankly, over the last week, if you'd like, any of these trades that have really caught your eye, and then obviously Nico for Stanley Johnson is the big one so far today.
Yeah, that's the one that's really gotten my attention. The fact that Milwaukee's kind of stockpiling and getting stronger through several different moves and didn't even have to give up a first-round pick is important to me, not only for the future, but right now. But you see in the Eastern Conference, Philadelphia already, Milwaukee here. Celtics are kind of in talks. We'll see what happens there. But there's really movement shifting, players kind of getting there. That top four is only at least trying to get stronger, which makes going to make for a very interesting playoffs round or playoff series. As a Lakers fan, I'm it's the lack of news that's concerning me. Not hearing anything about Anthony Davis or anything on that front. But yeah, yesterday's moves, I think it was the fact that the amount of them, just the sheer right one after another was the story for me. Like, I guess I'm not used to that late night flurry. I guess I'll start with Tobias Harris going to Philadelphia, though. I think that was like the first major like trade shakeup of this whole deadline, and I think that was possibly one of the more impactful because now Philadelphia can fill out their bench, and there you have a strong starting five, and other teams are combating that, which means making trades to fill up the roster there and shore weaknesses on that front. It's all very interesting.
Brew, anything else that we're missing so far? I've been trying to make sure we got all of our faces on here properly and promo and stuff. The wire's been a little quiet for the last couple minutes.
Yeah, I think maybe staying in Lakerland, what happens if they decide they can't get Anthony Davis? You know, what's the reaction move? Is there a reaction move? You got.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, that's what I'm worried about. Yeah, I'm worried about that because are you going to say to those young guys, okay, listen, I know you're demoralized. We almost traded all of you away and the kitchen sink, but let's rally on, make it to the playoffs, and do what we can once we get there. Like, Is that the next plan? Are you just going to go and kind of add ancillary pieces? You already made a trade, got Reggie Bullock in there. Are you going to look for another shooter, maybe a Trevor Ariza or something? It's weird. And if they are going to take that same roster and just, make it through the rest of the season, try to go for free agent there or try to trade for Anthony Davis at that point, are we just kind of, I don't want to say canning the season in, but that has to have an impact on these young players. We already saw at least a glimpse of it in Indiana in that 42-point loss. So I don't know if they had a backup plan. I think they just threw everything on the table there. At first it was LeBron and the youth. We're going to develop them this whole season. Then we'll go to the offseason, pick up a free agent. Fine. Then Anthony AD came, and all of a sudden we're trading everything for him. If that doesn't work, do you go back to plan A? Because with Magic and Pelinka, from what I've seen, there is no plan C.
But sometimes Plan D gets brought up, and then you just never know. I mean, this is a team that signed Rondo, Beasley, and JaVale, and just like put this non-shooters lance, surrounding LeBron James. So you just never know with these guys.
Very true.
JC, what's up, my man? I don't mean to ice you out here. Thoughts on Lakerland?
Like Corbin, I'm not so much a Laker fan, but I am. I've been a LeBron guy since I first heard of him since in high school, and so yeah, I'm real invested in what they're gonna do. I do think, given LeVar Ball's comments this morning, I do feel like that bridge is, if not burning, and there's interesting moves to be made if you wanted to just move that. Like I'm a big believer in Kuzma. I can give or take Ingram. I like Josh Hart. So if they have to stand pat, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I think the trading deadline is hard for the players in general. I feel like once the deadline passes, that's when players settle down more. Chemistry and things like that, I think are we put too much stock in them, and I feel like after a few weeks, if they start winning and become a little bit more stable, all that will blow over. And so, yeah, if it's, I don't think it'll be the worst thing if they end up with nothing, because it doesn't seem like they're going to end up with Anthony Davis, and so I think the buyout market will be pretty strong. And yeah, I think they'll be fine, especially given that the aim wasn't necessarily to win a championship this year.
By the way, I've been watching the chat room this entire show, and not one person has complimented the fact that I actually got a haircut and shaved, and I'm extremely offended. Everybody's the first to point out that the bed's not made, or Dan looks disheveled, or it's hat day because Dan didn't shower yet. But look at me today, guys. This is as lovely as I get. This is the punum that my wife got tricked into marrying. So, Corbin, what about some of the other stuff that led up to the deadline? Tobias Harris, I mean, what we're seeing here are a handful of Eastern Conference teams, and I can call them playoff teams, I think, pretty safely, that are kind of pushing their chips in a little bit. Bucks making moves to get better. Philly this season added Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris mid-season. I mean, this is there are a handful of teams up there that are trying to push themselves above the others, and Boston is still sitting there with their bag with a dollar sign on it with all the stuff inside, but we don't know what's in the mystery bag. Do we see the Celtics do anything?
I mean, I don't. Maybe a small minor move. The reason why is because if they're really making a play for AD, don't they need to keep some of those assets there to make more of a tantalizing offer that offseason? I mean, they can definitely offload Terry Rozier or someone there soon to be restricted free agent, and maybe pick up a good piece, to kind of shore up the bench. They're already like a pretty full team. I guess they're under the expectation that, Gordon Hayward, still working back to form. Maybe they can think there's a late season push there for him, and they already have that continuity there. Or they're trying to develop that continuity there with Kyrie and Gordon Hayward and all of them there now, that they're coming into stride. They've had a good win streak recently, that maybe the best course of action is to wait. I don't believe that. I think Danny Ainge is always in talks, and if he can make a move, like, it's going to happen. But I really don't think that's a priority for them, if only to look to the offseason and make that trade for AD.
I'm really just watching The Wire and waiting for something to happen here. I hope this last hour goes nuts, because too many non-rumors flashing by right now. Am I right? I mean, Brew, I'm seeing the most interesting tweet that's gone by is Ramona Shelburne basically confirming that the Pelicans and the Lakers have not spoken at all in the last 3 days. That's not what we wanted in our second hour.
I know from players' Twitters, like I know a couple of years ago when Isaiah Thomas tweeted the surprised eyes, that sort of started off the trend of like looking at what players are tweeting, and like Frank Kaminsky 39 minutes ago just posted "wow" with a whole bunch of like O's in the middle, and so I don't know if he knows something that we don't.
The word is that they are desperately trying to move him. I would have to think the Marcus Gasol trade is part of that madness. Brew, what do you think? And I admit this is where I am at a slight disadvantage because I don't know the contractual situation of everybody in Charlotte or Memphis. But what do we think is going to shake out on the potential Kaminsky, potential Marc Gasol front? I mean, Mark cleaned out his locker, right? So he's be almost impossible for him to come back.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I don't think him or Mike Conley's coming back. So that's a big move. And if you're a big, like you're talking about plan D and plan E for the Lakers, and I don't know the cap implications of this, but, you know, I look at a Marc Gasol and I think, yeah, he would be a great fit in a place like LA or, you know, and otherwise with a contending team. We've had, you know, just kind of zoom out a little bit. We've had trade deadlines where it's been extremely quiet. There was I think maybe 5 years ago, there was one where there was no deals for the entire morning. And I think the first deal hit 30 minutes prior to the deadline. And then a third of the league got traded. And it all happened within an hour and a half. So we just don't know how these things will shake out. The Pelicans and the Lakers are in that extreme posturing position. The football ownership, as we've discussed throughout this show, you know, you're seeing a lot of reports from team reporters that they don't want to, you know, the Bensons, they do not want to give in here. And management is saying, hey, look, you know, we really got to look at this. So I'm not convinced that that's dead. Again, it comes back to what Boston has in play. And I keep thinking about Boston and just like, here's something we haven't discussed yet. Kyrie Irving, about a week ago, you know, basically flipped out in front of the media. They said, I don't owe anybody anything. And, you know, Boston's in the lead, you know, and with this constant Kevin Durant stuff, I mean, you see Kevin Durant lose it on the media last night, which was hilarious because, you know, those of us who've been around basketball Twitter know who Ethan Strauss is. And the idea that, you know, KD's going toe to toe with him. I remember when Ethan Strauss broke in, you know, kind of around the same time I did. It's just such a kind of meteoric rise for Ethan. Now he'll be writing a book about the Warriors, so good for him. But KD getting thrown off his game to the extent that he's going to talk trash to an individual media person and bring that up in his first talk with the media in about 8 days. It just smells like something's cooking. Like New York maybe does have the inside track there. You hear about Scott Perry, his relationship with Kevin Durant from Seattle. Perry is a relationship guy. That's how he gets deals done around the league. So if you're Boston and you know that Kyrie Irving is not a part of your future, what do? Do you make a deal? You know, is this too big to happen? Or, you know, you just sort of let Kyrie go off and do his own thing. So that's you know, Boston's just sitting there, not really doing anything right now. We haven't really heard a lot there, but, you know, I'm intrigued. I'm not convinced that, you know, it's 100% locked that he's going to be in Boston.
Corbin, what are your thoughts on this one? And this is, by the way, is my opportunity to go refill my water cup. So feel free to talk as long as you want.
Appreciate it. That's interesting. I mean, that's not out of play, I would imagine. You're right. If they want to avoid the drama, they really think he's kind of halfway out the door. I don't see why not. It just seems so. I mean, it's realistic. It almost seems 2K in thought process. Like, wow, trade like a major play like that. But in the same vein, you're right. You're looking to the future. He's no longer a part of those plans, or to the best of your knowledge, he isn't. Just run toward kind of putting out, you know, mixed feelings, different feelers out. Then, yeah, get any assets you can from that, and even better, you know, package and offer, have something for that off season. I think the only thing that would be issue for Boston and Kyrie in that case is that if. And I don't know if the rumors are true about AD wanting to play with Kyrie, or, you know, Kyrie being the best asset to lure AD over to re-sign long term, if that would be a potential complication. But if not, and it's just all posturing, then by all means, I think you make that trade. Find someone who wants. I mean, Kyrie should have no end to suitors there. See how you can make salaries match, bring in some, you know, picks and maybe single players or something to that sort. And yeah, you come back in the offseason. Listen, you know, New Orleans, we have all this. Let's go.
Well, and on top of that, I mean, if you just got to look to last season and see that Boston without Kyrie did pretty damn good in the playoffs. And maybe they look at this as, hey, you know what? Golden State's too tough to beat anyway. So why are we going to sell out for a championship this year? Let's get these guys another year of experience. If you believe Terry Rozier can be a piece for the future, Marcus Smart, you know, maybe you have a backcourt of the future in tandem there. Of course, you've got to get big pieces to come in to put you over the top. If you're Boston, what would Kyrie Irving bring back? I don't know, because his list of destinations he'd be willing to play in is going to be predictably small. So again, it comes back to New York. Have those two guys made a decision? If they have made a decision that that's where they want to be, you know, these things happen so many months in advance. Then and only then would I see any sort of movement coming on the Boston front. And the fact that Philly got better and the fact that Milwaukee got better, you know, that's got to play into this somehow. As it relates to Kyrie Irving, I don't know that you know, changes the equation if you want to keep a Kyrie Irving or not, but it might just put further doubt that this is the year that you're winning it all. And so we'll see. I think that this comes down to Kyrie and it comes down to KD. If those two guys want to play in New York, they're going to play in New York. And then everything's going to fit in around that. So no smoke right now, no fire on that front.
You see that tweet from Dave McMenamin?
No.
Linked and missed it.
If Anthony Davis, 2 minutes ago, if Anthony Davis is not traded today, he plans to play out the remainder of the season in the lineup, a source tells ESPN. Every game, he says. So we got a battle
He's
brewing.
trying to make this as uncomfortable for them as possible.
Uh-huh.
And that is great.
That's
wow.
That's quite a move, man. JC, I mean, do we think the Pelicans blink? So far, no.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think. I think they're going to stand pat. It seems like Boston might have gotten in their head and convinced them to maybe wait. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that there's so many dominoes to this whole thing. It's weird how one will throw the whole thing off. But yeah, I think the most interesting cog in the whole piece is Kyrie. Because yeah, if they commit to Rozier, or if they trade Rozier and then Kyrie leaves and then they have no point guards, that's not going to be great. But yeah, I think I don't think Anthony Davis trying to force the issue is the right move. I think there's been too much noise here. I feel like there's too much pressure on both sides. I think they're both just going to wilt like a souffle.
Brew, I'll loop right back to you. What do you think of this AD's trying to push the issue thing?
I think that's his agents doing the talking right there. AD is not confrontational. In fact, that's been one of the criticisms of his play, is he's not been assertive, you know, to demand the ball until recent years and sort of letting things happen around him without, you know, asserting himself. So this is not his style. Look, you cannot tell the Pelicans, one, there can be blatant tampering and, you know, LA is going to pillage your star. And also that you have to play him now and potentially lose him for nothing if he gets hurt. By the way, he's taken 500 trips to the locker room in his career in the middle of a game and returned for about 495 of them.
Well, you know my opinion on that. I think it's irritable bowel syndrome, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, but at the same time, I mean, I've seen with my own eyes at least 15, 20 really bad landings, ankles, you know, back stuff. He looks kind of old, to be honest. Like he's got a lot of mileage for a younger player, and being an injury prone guy, some people are trying to push back on that description because he's been able to stay on the floor more recently. But yeah, you can't force the Pelicans to do that. So this is a shrewd move, you know, from his camp and doing everything they can to make the Pelicans uncomfortable. But I don't think it's actually going to move the needle trade wise. The Lakers need to, if they're going to get this done, the Lakers need to try to find ways to reach out and get other teams' assets to include into the deal, to try to get some first round picks that actually have some teeth by trading some of these young guys and being able to turn around and offer New Orleans something in the top 10. You know, then now you're talking, now you're competing with Boston. And here's the thing that I'm sure they're saying to New Orleans that New Orleans has to consider is, how can you trust that Boston's not going to do something else between now and then? And now you've lost your leverage right now. Right now you have Boston to leverage against LA. You might not have LA to leverage against Boston this summer.
Sure.
Corbin?
No, I mean, that I totally agree with that. I'm actually in thought looking at my Twitter timeline wondering why the Grizzlies haven't made a move as we get ever closer to the deadline, but that's a totally different story.
I know, man. We're waiting on that one.
Yeah, I literally was looking like, okay, what's going on there? But no, I agree that interplay is important, especially with AD. And if he decides to play, I mean, it's more like you said, a power play through the agent. I do think though that he actually would do it, and that would just make. I mean, I would be in for it, just like the simmering pettiness of the NBA trade deadline just manifesting itself onto the season. But it's a lot. It's like pressure that I don't think the Pelicans are really kind of giving into, because I'm not even sure where their ownership. I know they have Mickey Loomis in there and Del Demps and all these other moving parts there. Who knows like where their priorities lie and like how I don't even know. Like they're making moves aside from Davis, kind of keeping him, set apart there. Do they even think like that's the move they're planning on making, or are they pretty dead set on, okay, we're going to keep him, whatever happens, happens? Like, is that Boston offer that compelling? Or is it just a matter of, we're going to stick it to him, make a trade request. We're going to be that one team that holds on to the star after they've requested a trade when Cleveland couldn't do it, when, Minnesota couldn't do it. We're going to be that team that says, Davis, you're staying here. It is what it is.
The only stuff that's flashing by right now are like silly tweets by Ricky Rubio.
I saw that.
Who tweeted that so far his code to the practice facility is working.
Wait a
minute. Well, we got one.
About it too.
We got one. I'm cutting you guys off.
Oh, wow.
Memphis, the Grizzlies are into the mix. Garrett Temple and JaMychal Green have been sent to the Clippers for Avery Bradley. Garrett Temple and JaMychal Green to the Clippers for Avery Bradley. I'm sure there's going to be something more coming on with this one momentarily, but this is interesting because we know the Grizzlies are trying to dump everything, and this clears out one of the front court guys. If Marc Gasol is next, that doesn't leave very much left. Brew, I'm coming to you first, big dog, because that's you got to give the people what they want. I mean, Avery Bradley, do we think he finishes the year in Memphis? I don't even care that much on that front. Whatever. I mean, maybe he plays. He does have that old Memphis-y kind of appeal. But JaMychal Green and Garrett Temple being gone, that frees up a lot of minutes for the Grizzlies, and whoever they want to decide to play in them, that's where we come in. What do you think, Brew?
Oh, man. Well, Grizzlies Twitter has already weighed in, and they've determined that Avery Bradley sucks. So Bradley had one good fantasy year.
Oh, my God. Wait a minute.
What you got?
Yeah, I just saw that.
Toronto is nearing an agreement to land Marc Gasol, league sources tell Woj. So we may have a few things to talk about on the Memphis front here coming up. Until we get names on the Toronto deal, we can't talk about much because presumably they're going to have to send something pretty big back on the contract side. And we will see on that one. So let's do the little one first, and then we'll get into the Gasol one unless we get some more details.
Oh, no, let's do it the other way, man.
You think? But we don't know who's going.
I don't care. Let's talk about the big one.
All right, we'll talk Marc Gasol to the Raptors. It sounds like it's not completely official yet, but that's a big change in Toronto.
It's a massive change. You're going to see this impact Pascal Siakam. You're going to see this impact Serge Ibaka. You're going to see this impact Danny Green. You're going to see it impact all of the Fred VanVleets, the Delon Wrights. There's going to be no more scraps on the table for any of these guys. I mean, this is going to hurt Siakam quite a bit, who's having a great season. A lot of hoop ball guys have him. Whoever's going back, though, if they land in Memphis, is landing in a fantasy gold mine because there's not a lot of players there right now. So
what happens to Valanciunas? He's supposed to play tonight or tomorrow. No, it's tonight.
I mean, he's the logical guy to go. You don't really want to have two lumbering bigs that you don't really have playing time for. So I would think Valanciunas would be the guy you try to liquidate.
Oh my God. This is really something.
This could be huge for him. I mean, Valanciunas needs 20 minutes to be a mid-rounder. And so if he was to get 28, which I don't think he's going to be playing more than 28, unless it's just a perfect situation, but there's a ton of upside there. He shouldn't be available in any fantasy leagues. You're rooting for which guy is going to go. So you might be able to make the ad. You're not going to be able to add Siakam or Ibaka, but maybe somebody like Delon Wright, Fred VanVleet, these guys that have low ownership. You should put them on a watch list if you got dead weight and you're just sort of cycling through players that could be dumped from your team.
Man.
Delon Wright has a great stat set. Fred VanVleet needs like 28, 29, 30 minutes to be a late round guy. So Delon Wright is the guy. And I don't want to keep rambling. I just want to read Twitter right now. What do we got?
We don't have the pieces going back just yet. So until we do, Brew, I'm coming right back to you on this one, and I'll keep one eye on Twitter, and believe me, I'll jump in if we see anything. What about the Jermichael Green and Garrett Temple part? Does this free up? Justin Holiday might get traded in the next couple minutes also. But Jaren Jackson Jr., Ivan Rabb. Wait a minute. Okay, I talked long enough for Woj to get the other half. Delon Wright is part of the trade, ladies and gentlemen. Toronto
I have something to do. I'll be right back.
So what you're saying is pick up Delon Wright with one of your weekly moves.
I mean, yeah. Look, you got Shelvin Mack, but you got nothing going in Memphis. They really need players more than anything. The guys that are there are even on. Oh, Valanciunas, Delon Wright, CJ Miles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Delon Wright is the guy. Look, let's try to keep everybody nice and calm here.
Yeah.
But run to the wire. No.
So wait a minute. Let's keep this simple.
I think he's a strong ad. I think he'd be like right underneath Jahlil Okafor for me right now as far as guys that you want coming out of the break. Look, in about 24 minutes per game, he can have late round value. So what if he gets the 30 or the 28 minutes per game and is racking up triple ones and getting you good scoring, rebounding, and assist numbers? I think he's a guy you want to add. Do it.
Does JV coming to Memphis, does that kill a chance for Ivan Rabb to play 28 to 30 minutes?
Probably. I think he's not good enough. He's maybe a 20-minute guy. If you added him, you could see how this plays out. But at the same time, I would not hold him for Delon Wright. So I got to go, Dan. Stop bugging me, man.
All right.
I got to pick up Delon Wright.
Corbin, you're a reality guy. I'll let you talk about this trade while the rest of us make our moves.
Oh, yeah, for sure, because my fantasy team is horrible right now. No, but it's crazy. The top four in the Eastern Conference just straight up arms race stockpiling. And this only puts, we were just talking about Boston and what moves they're going to make. I mean, this just puts, I think, more pressure on them to either do something. Either A, we're going to commit and we're going to roll with this. Maybe add another piece, or B, maybe we should, like you said, look to kind of see what's out there. Because Enes Kanter, if he's the addition they're bringing, like you said, Dan, that's not going to cut it. I mean, even with Toronto, Valanciunas, okay, that's like a swap center-wise. And then Delon Wright, very good back. I mean, he's been very good for them. You already mentioned the fantasy implications with him in Memphis. But aside from that, a pick and CJ Miles, who is, rotation-wise in and out, that's good. You still keep your core pieces more or less for Toronto. We already talked about these other teams here that already have the moves made, Philadelphia and that. I mean, Boston is in the mix for sure, but that's crazy. Wow. I really thought it was going to be maybe bigger. I thought Lowry might be on the move. I know there was like a rumor talk of doing like a swap between those two, Lowry and Valanciunas for Gasol and Conley a couple days ago. So obviously that's not going to happen, but that's something else. And you have another guy, just a three-point shooter, so it stretches the floor out even more. He has, that eye as far as passing. Defensively, he's not what he was. He's 34, but at least having that savvy there, along with, the offensive system under Nick Nurse, which is a far cry from JB Bickerstaff. Wow. That's really all I got for it. Wow.
So there are seemingly, Brew, well, actually, JC, let me hit you up on this one if I haven't lost you yet. I know you got to go in a minute here. Thoughts on this big deal? And then, Brew, I'm coming back to you, so I hope you're done with your moves soon.
Yeah, it's obviously huge. We talked about before we even knew the pieces how much this is going to impact Siakam and Serge Ibaka, and yeah, this is clearly going to affect their minutes and their usage. Yeah, what do you do with Ibaka at this point? Because I mean, maybe the Raptors could even get more. Like if they wanted to offer him up, see if they can get something for him. Or I mean, the Raptors still have plenty of options, good and bad. It's crazy.
All right, Bruce. So let's play a little comparison game, because that's what a lot of people are going to be doing at this point as they start to decide who they might be able to drop for a guy like DeLon Wright. To me, he's the guy that wasn't on a team going into this trade deadline. JV was probably owned. Gasol was definitely owned. Well, okay, Brew, let's start with this. This has to be a good thing for Marc Gasol, right? He's going to a team that wants to use him and a team that's going to be going to the playoffs and not tanking.
Yeah, absolutely. Marc Gasol's game travels well, so he can be fine even in a low usage role, clean up some of that efficiency and be at least a top 60 guy, if not a top 40 guy, as he typically can be. I just dropped Luke Cornett. I wanted to see how Luke Cornett did, if somehow DeAndre Jordan got traded and then, you had your original situation heading into this deadline. But with that looking pretty bleak, I just said, let's just roll the dice and pick up DeLon Wright there. Tama Carr beat me in the hoop ball league, so screw you, Tama.
Are we sure that DeLon Wright is going to get significant usage in Memphis? That's my only question on this. Is he going to be able to sort of lead things enough? Because we know that he has a really neat stat set, but there have been times in Toronto where he's been sort of pushed to the fringe just because there are other bigger name scorers or whatever that are out there on the court. Brew, that's my question for you. Like, do we see enough on the offensive side now with this new situation?
We don't have the answer to that question. He has struggled, to start off the groin injury and then being pushed down in the rotation. He hasn't been able to get into a rhythm and, has kind of somewhat sort of played his way out of favor there in Toronto. But recently he's actually done pretty good, shown up with the signature stat set. It really, had DeLon Wright on hoop ball teams heading out of draft day as a later last round pick. I think that the way you look at this stuff is you kind of just look at somebody like Mike Conley. Is he gone? Probably, yeah. Okay, is Shelvin Mack your point guard? Maybe he's your starting point guard until, the last 3-4 weeks of the season, and in which case maybe they do flip it to a DeLon Wright. But really, you're talking about Justin Holiday. Kyle Anderson is in this weird situation with his shoulder injury. You have a sort of just a random mishmash of players. Avery Bradley's going to be in there. Is he even going to play? Bradley, we were touching on him a second ago before things started breaking. He had one good season, and that's when he chose to be a rebounder. If Jonas Valanciunas is coming in to play a bigger role, that won't be as necessary because he rebound hunts. And you saw Avery Bradley's value evaporate as he played next to Andre Drummond and then a little bit with DeAndre Jordan. So if he's not getting those boards, the stat set's not good enough. So I don't think you're worrying there. And we don't know if he's going to play. And we also don't know if somebody like Justin Holiday will also be on the run because he's been rumored to be on the block. But you look at those guys in aggregate and in total, and there's just not enough good players. And there are injury risks within this group. You got a guy in Bruno Caboclo who's factoring into this somehow. Whether or not he gets his last contract for the rest of the season will come into play here. But I just think he's a healthy-ish, at least right now. He hasn't really popped up on the injury report in a while. DeLon Wright, that is. You got to assume he's going to get 24 minutes. And that 24 minutes will be a late-round value. So in that respect, it's the late round floor with the upside after that. I really think if he was to just get full run of the yard, he could easily be a top 60 guy.
Do you wait at all to see what happens with Mike Conley now?
No.
What about the other trade, the smaller one, the non-Gasol trade? I haven't really bugged you about that one yet. JaMychal Green going to the Clippers. It actually kind of feels like there's a little bit of room for him in LA. Am I out of my mind with that one? And then with Avery Bradley coming back to Memphis, does he play? Does this just mean more opportunity for Justin Holiday for the time being. Let's start on the Clippers side. And before we even get to that, I know we've got a shift change here. We passed the top of the hour when crazy stuff was going on. Let me go back to my schedule and see what we got going on. So Corbin and JC, you guys, we're losing you here, but a big thank you to both of those gentlemen for popping on with us at JC DeLeon1 on Twitter. You are just at Corbin Ford, right? I don't have it in front of me, but I think you're one of the one of the easy ones.
You got to have the NBA attached to it, but you got it.
Corbin Ford NBA. There you go. So follow those guys on Twitter. Big thank you to two of our nightly hosts. We will talk to you soon.
Thanks,
thank you guys.
Guys.
And I am very pleased to announce we'd like to welcome the Miracle Man, the man who helped me found Fantasy NBA today. Vincent, what's up?
What's going on, guys? The trio's back together. What's poppin'? What's poppin'?
Come on, sing it, Vince. Do you know what I'm asking you to
I
sing?
believe in miracles.
No.
Unfortunately,
And not do you believe in magic? No, it's we're the three best friends that anyone could have.
The three best friends
Oh,
that
man.
anyone
And-
ever leave each other. What's
Hey, Dan, this was a really bad idea. Bad idea, Dan.
Why did I put you two on a show together? What have I done? You can follow Vince on Twitter at VMCenter. We're talking the two Memphis trades so far. And, Brew, I want to finish getting your thoughts on the Jermichael Green, Garrett Temple, Avery Bradley half of this thing. And then, Vince, I'm going to come to you for thoughts on both Memphis deals. Brew, does a guy like Jermichael Green carve out a role in L.A.? Does this open up more minutes for anybody in Memphis with his departure? The other one seems to be just a shooting guard swap. But thoughts on the smaller of the two trades, which is still not an insignificant one?
You know, a lot of smart fantasy people have been trying to take advantage of Michael Green because he's been low owned. And this is a guy who you just know is going to be a top 100 value if getting minutes, if healthy, but he hasn't been able to stay on the floor at all. He's got a knee issue. He's had other issues in the past. So it's really concerning that he was on the block, but also, and maybe this rumor or maybe the absence was just, you know, to keep him off the floor while they're trying to trade him. You could never rule that out with a wink nod from the team. But I don't know, man. Like, if this comes down to Marcin Gortat, is he going to play? Is Mike Muscala going to play? Because that's going to end up being, you know, say 25, 35, maybe even 40 minutes. I don't think they would go that high. But if Gortat doesn't play and you can slide Harrell into some center minutes and you can have Muscala playing some center minutes and it opens up that power forward position for his 26, 28 minutes per game. Yeah, I think he's an option. I don't know how high he is on the list because of the low upside, because of the injury. But I'd set him like as a late round guy, not a ton of upside, but you know, somebody to look at when the dust settles. After all of this is done happening, I wouldn't waste a move. You know, we keep asking. I wouldn't waste a move, but that would be you know, a lower priority ad.
Vince, thoughts on both Memphis deals, and then it's time for me to do a little promo here.
Well, Marc Gasol going to Toronto. That's cool. My big thing is I don't know what exactly the Memphis Grizzlies are. They just a full-on tank mode? Is that when is the decision of moving Mike Conley going to happen? Is it still going to happen? There's been a lot of rumblings about him going to Utah. I find that very interesting. That big man situation, though, is Jonas Valanciunas even going to play because they're trying to tank? I'm not 100% sure what's going on with the Grizzlies, but from the Raptors side, they saw what Milwaukee was doing in the moves that they made. I think they knew they needed to do something big to pair up Ibaka and Pascal Siakam with Marc Gasol in the East with that team. Man, they're going to be dangerous. I'm excited. They needed to find a way to keep Kawhi Leonard there. They needed to show that they're winning a lineup with Kawhi, Kyle Lowry, Marc Gasol, Siakam, or even Serge Ibaka. Wow, it's just wow.
Yeah, this is neat, man. You got now 3 of the top. I mean, I don't know how you necessarily rank them in the Eastern Conference. You could just go by standings, I guess, and the 76ers are 5th place at that point. But Philly, Toronto, Milwaukee, all really loading up here as we approach the trade deadline. The Bucks get Nico Mirotic. The Raptors get Marc Gasol. Philly gets Tobias Harris. the Pacers got Nick Stauskas. They're in a tough spot, obviously, with Oladipo going down. Celtics have remained, Vince, oddly quiet through this whole thing, although I did just see a leak, if you want to call it that, about Boston claiming that they're going to offer, let me see if I can pull this back up. Boston expected to offer Jason Tatum, Al Horford, Marcus Smart, Robert Williams, and 3 first-rounders for Anthony Davis in the offseason. This feels like a trademark Danny Ainge leak just to convince New Orleans not to make a deal right now. But to this point, Boston has not yet done anything. So fantasy-wise, reality-wise, the 3 teams out east that have been loading up on things, what are your thoughts on how this all shakes out now?
I mean, with Boston, they can't really do anything. They're on this Anthony Davis market. They're wanting him. They know that that's their target. That's the guy they're eyeing. So they can't really do much because they need the assets to go acquire him. I still think Milwaukee's my front runner in the East. As good as Toronto is defensively, as much as they got that star in Kawhi Leonard, who's arguably the #1 player in the Eastern Conference right now, I still think Milwaukee is putting together a solid roster, and that addition of Mirotic today, I mean, I feel like they're going to make a death lineup where Giannis is your center, Mirotic, Middleton, Brogdon, and Bledsoe. That's something dangerous that you're going to have to keep your eye on. And then on top of that, they have shooting everywhere on that floor, even with Brook Lopez out there. That's the team I'm keeping an eye on. I don't even think they're done. I think there's a possibility that there's a Bledsoe deal that can happen. I don't have any sources. I haven't read anything there. I just think that there's still a possibility that they're making another move before the deadline today.
Brew, I know you were making sure everything was updated in the trade deadline document over at hoop-ball.com, so I'm going to buy you another minute or two here while we do a quick promo, because we are in hour 3 of our 4 hours of trade deadline live coverage without commercial breaks, but it doesn't mean we can't tell you things we got going on. Again, please do take a moment. Those of you watching the show here, there are still many of you, quite a few actually, now that I look at the number. If you're here for the first time, if you're joining us at Hoop Ball for the first time, do subscribe to our YouTube channel. You get all of our shows uploaded over there as they come. That's every podcast we do at Hoop Ball gets moved over to the YouTube channel. You can follow all 3 of us on Twitter, at Dan Vespers, at Aaron Bruski, and at VM Center. And, of course, you can follow the Hoop Ball blurb feed at Hoop Ball Fantasy, because, well, that's got tweets going out right now about all these trades and what guys are going to see value, and that's the stuff you can get all season long, even when we're not actively having a live show to discuss this stuff as it's happening all season long. And, of course, this show is brought to you by Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. Coupon code is HoopBall. You can get 15% off on your order at their website, hawaiianisles.com. You can also follow them on Twitter at HI Kona Coffee. And if you want to just get something Amazon Prime, you can search for Hawaiian Isles on Amazon. Coupon code doesn't work at Amazon, but if you're a Prime member, you can get your stuff sent to you a little bit quicker, I think, would be the goal there. Still, I'm a man who likes to save his dollars, so do it at hawaiianisles.com. And tell them Dan sent you, and they'll still let the coupon work, because they don't hate me that much yet. Brew, coming back over to you on all this stuff that's shaken out, in particular with the Memphis trades that have already taken place. I think the dilemma that a lot of folks are facing right now, and based on what I'm seeing in our chat room, is everybody's trying to debate who they could potentially drop for Delon Wright. Rest of season, what are you thinking 9 category rank wise? Do you think top 100? Do you think he could go higher than that?
Oh, we could go way higher than that, but let's just try to keep this in a reasonable bound here. I think his floor is 22 to 24 minutes per game there. Let's toss out the idea. What if he's somehow not healthy? That's been the source of his troubles this year. And, maybe there's some issue with that we're unaware of. I'm not worried about that right now, because that's way too tinfoil hattish to bring into the discussion. We're just looking at the players that are coming in. Avery Bradley, I'm not sure if we have a report whether or not he's sticking around or he's somehow going to get let go. Let's assume he plays. He's probably looking at a good 25 minutes per game, maybe in that scenario. Justin Holiday, Bruno Caboclo, Kyle Anderson, probably man anywhere from the 2 to the 4 positions. Probably no real pressure on a Bruno Caboclo to get more than 20, 25 minutes per game at this point. I think he was the guy that people were stashing in hope that he could somehow be at the last man standing there in Memphis. So that's kind of a long, meandering way to say I think he's guaranteed 22 to 24 minutes. And I think in that scenario, he is a top 130, top 120, maybe even if he gets an increased role, top 100 player in that scenario. So if he is, you know, they go, this is a great young player that we want to try to build around. Shelvin Mack, you're not good. We're going to give Delon Wright 28 minutes per game, or heaven forbid they turn the car keys over to him and give him 30, 32. In 26 to 28 minutes per game, I think he could be a top 75 guy pretty easily the rest of the way. So that's a ton of upside. You know, you're looking at your who can you drop list. I need to hear some names.
All right, I'll throw a few names out to you. Some of the other old man squad guys like PJ Tucker or Danny Green.
Yes, I would drop both of them.
Interesting. Okay, what about a guy who's seeing his role in constant flux like a JaVale McGee?
No, JaVale's got top 40 upside.
Maxi Kleba, who just moved into a 27 to 30-minute role in Dallas.
Yeah, I'd drop him.
Interesting. All right, so you're very, very high on Delon Wright is what I'm getting here. Let me see if I can pull a couple names out of the chat room as well. Mikal Bridges versus Delon Wright.
No, Mikal Bridges is a top 60 guy right now, and he's not even really, you know, kicked in. So, no.
Old man Marvin Williams. You know I'm keeping Marvin in this one, but where are you on that?
And give me Delon Wright.
Oh my goodness! You know Marvin's been a top 65 guy for 2 months now, right?
He has. But I worry about him in Charlotte. You know, with whatever they have going on, whatever they choose to do. You know, he's old, dude.
I know, but he's their most consistent guy these days besides Kemba Walker. All right, Vince, similar questions for you over there. What about guys you'd consider dropping for Delon Wright?
I heard you say Marvin Williams. I'm for sure for Mikal Bridges. That guy, he constantly shows me something new almost every single game. There's just something more developing to him every single game. He's a gritty player, knocking down shots. I love watching him play. But Delon Wright has something special coming to him right there. Is going to be someone that can put the ball in the hole, and especially being with a team that is possibly ending this deadline with not a star player anymore. I mean, they just traded away Marc Gasol. They're now possibly going to get rid of Mike Conley as well. Wright's the guy that you definitely want to add right now. I'm fully on board with going and dropping whoever you can at the end of your roster to go pick him up. But yeah, I don't know why you keep Marvin Williams. I know he's putting up like top 75 value right now. I'm not a huge fan of old man Williams.
Oh, I can't stand you guys. You're killing me over here. My poor old man Marvin. He's been so good this year. Let's see if any other names have popped up in the forum. Well, Al-Farouq Aminu. He's another guy in that old man squad. It sounds like both of you guys would prefer Delon Wright to Aminu.
Yeah.
Is that a consensus? Yes. There's one for you, Brew. Brew. Brew's microphone is off right now. I think he might be typing.
Yeah, I was typing. I gave you the thumbs up.
Oh, okay. I can't see what's going on in the window half the time. What about Thomas Bryant, Brew? He's one of your favorites these days. Bryant or Wright?
At least you're making me think here.
Yeah.
Damn, you're making me think here.
Well, you can credit the chat room for that. A couple of folks were asking about Bryant.
I'll go on record and say I'm going with Delon Wright over Thomas Bryant. I like Bryant, but I think Delon Wright, he's capable of racking up a steal and a half per game, multiple three-pointers, decent percentages both from the field and from the free throw line. I think I'm going with Wright over Bryant, but that's just me.
You know, and I'm going to go with Vince here because I think you go with talent, and Thomas Bryant, for everything he's doing well, is really not there yet. And so this is a pure fantasy play, having Thomas Bryant on your squad. It's tough. It's so close. And, man, I mean, this is what it's all about. You know, somebody's going to pick him up right now. You know, if you got time to see this out, that would be great because you can see exactly how Memphis, fleshes out here at the end. But this is you go with talent. He's got great per minute upside. And, you know, Scott Brooks is the thing that's in the back of my head right now. Could he all season long play Thomas Bryant closer to 20 or 19 minutes per game than, the 28, 29 you'd like to see? Yeah, he could absolutely do that. If I knew Thomas Bryant was going to play 26 minutes per game the rest of the way, I'd say Thomas Bryant, just because he can rack up enough boards and money counting stats and just sort of eke his way to value. And then you don't have to deal with the question of what is Delon Wright. But no, with all things considered, I'm going to go Delon Wright here.
Aren't you? Oh,
yeah,
sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think you were going to say the same thing I just saw. Is it about Gortat?
Well, yeah, I saw the Gortat thing. I was going to mention it. The Clippers waived him, but I was going to ask Brew. I mean, another reason why I'm going with Wright is because now the Wizards have Bobby Portis, and I think what Portis can bring is the spacing. He's a decent rebounder. He's only really played per game this season. I think he fits what they're going to try to build with Satoransky and Beal to end the season. That's also another reason why I don't really like Brian. I just think that they're going to start being a team that pushes the ball and looks to shoot a ton of three-pointers.
Well, Brian can shoot the three. That helps, but not in the context of what you're saying. He can't really shoot the trailer three. He's a wide open, I'm going to hit a three guy. But to your points, Portis gives Brooks that option, and especially even Jabari Parker, you no longer have this massive hole there for Thomas Bryant to get his minutes in. You got Jeff Green, who he likes to play at center. You got Jan Mahimi. So there are multiple ways for Thomas Bryant to be held back, though you should not be playing Jan Mahimi this season. I don't believe you should let Thomas Bryant learn, on the court, and Scott Brooks has done this his entire career. So I'm going to go with Wright.
So there was another piece of news that not trade deadline related, but city officials in Portland believe that Blazers might be sold. That's an interesting turn of events. Not something we'll cover right now, but if a team gets sold, that's not nothing. With Marcin Gortat getting waived, Brew, does this make anything more promising for JaMychal Green headed to town?
Well, now I got to pull my mute back off. This is one of the things we were looking at was Marcin Gortat going to stick around? Now you could say Mike Muscala is your probable starter. I would think you want to go with the bigger big against most starting lineups in the NBA. It could be one of those rotational things where they just look at the other team's lineup and decide, do they want a big or they want to, start either JaMychal Green or Montrezl Harrell. Harrell, for whatever reason, has been pigeonholed into being a bench guy a lot of the time. So I could see Muscala getting, say, 25 minutes per game and then being a threat for top 150, 160 value. So keep an eye on him in deeper leagues. But then you do get the opportunity for JaMychal Green to slide in for those 26 to 28 minutes per game. You're worried a little bit about Wilson Chandler and what he does when he comes back. But maybe this upgrades him a little bit. JaMychal Green, that is. I would still consider him to be a player that you don't race to go get. That's somebody that if you miss out on everybody else, if you have to put in bids, if you want to wait and see how things go and then you lose out on some other guys or however this plays out for you, I think he's a back end of the trade deadline guy.
Vince?
I'm sorry. I didn't get to hear the question because I was on Twitter looking up stuff.
I'm not choking, Vince.
We're trying to figure out all this stuff. Anything with the Gortat news? We were just talking about JaMychal Green. If there's any room for him, or is this more of a wait and see?
It's definitely a wait and see for me. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a huge JaMychal Green fan. I don't think he really makes any team better. I feel like he's not that good of a rebounder. He's not that great of a defender. What he likes to do is shoot the ball. That's the one thing I've noted about him is he likes to shoot the ball. He likes to get the ball in the post. He likes to have the ball in his hands. It's definitely a wait and see approach for me. Not a huge fan of JaMychal Green.
Well, it's been an interesting last 20 minutes or so here. The Grizzlies with the massive shakeup. Again, thank you to everybody for tuning in to our trade deadline live coverage. We're about 2.5 hours into our 4-hour program. And we'll just do a little bit of a recap, I guess, at this point of what's gone on over the last week or so, but certainly the big ones of today. Nico Mirotic sent to the Milwaukee Bucks for Stanley Johnson and Jason Smith. The Memphis Grizzlies with the last two interesting ones, JaMychal Green and Garrett Temple to the Clippers for Avery Bradley. Marc Gasol to the Toronto Raptors, the biggest trade of the day, certainly for Jonas Valanciunas, Delon Wright, and CJ Miles. And as we've been doing here, we're mostly just discussing how high a guy like Delon Wright could go and what that could potentially mean. There's so many moving pieces right now, and it's all started to shake out in that final hour before the deadline. It does complicate things on the buyout market. I saw a tweet flash by that we don't know if the Pelicans might even try to buy out a guy like Markieff Morris, so that's something on the table as well. We talked about him earlier in the podcast. But now that I have a second here, I think nothing's broken in the last 2 minutes. Vince, just going back on the week that has been, what were some of your highlights coming to this point?
Well, I mean, I cover the Sacramento Kings for SacKingsNation.com, so if I didn't mention the fact that the Sacramento Kings got Harrison Barnes, I think I wouldn't do myself any justice here. I love that deal for the Kings. I think they gave him just the right amount to go get a guy who has a player option for $25 million next year. I think there's a good chance they're going to try to convince him to opt out of his player option, try to sign him to an extension. Everyone that I've talked to said that they're trying to go for 4 years, $80 million. I don't know if that's what they're going to go for, if that's what happens, but I think that's what they're going to start targeting. I think there's one question I want to ask you guys before I have to hop off here because I only have a couple more minutes left. And I think this will get a good conversation going since there's no news happening yet. If the Lakers are unable to acquire Anthony Davis by this deadline, which I don't see it happening, is it time for them to tank? Is it time for them to just call this season a wash? LeBron, being 34 years old, just had his biggest injury of his career. And you know, a 30-point loss the other day to a Victor Oladipo-less Pacers team. Is it almost time to just call it for them and just say, hey, the only way we can make our offer stronger during the offseason is to make sure that our draft pick that we're giving up in 2019 unprotected is somewhere higher up in the lottery?
I think I'm on the other side of that fence. I think they got to show to anybody that might be thinking about signing there in free agency that they have the pieces to compete and they need the guy to get them over the hump. It's a dicey line to walk. I think if you do go the other direction, Vince, like you're talking about, you have to make sure you note to the free agent, hey, look, when we were at full strength and LeBron was here, we were, they were like the 4 seed, right? And then he got hurt and they dropped to the bubble. So we were right in the thick of things. LeBron got hurt. We used this opportunity to go get a couple of better assets in the upcoming year or years. But you have to make sure that whoever they're selling that to is buying it. That's the key. And your best tank, if you're the Lakers, is, what are they at now, 27 wins? I mean, your best case scenario is probably like a 12th or 13th pick, and that's, I mean, it's better than making a push and getting like a 20th pick, but is there really that big of a difference? Brew, I know you're working on getting the articles all updated at hoop-ball.com, so I'm going to bring it back to you in just a minute. But Vince, I wanted to give you a shout out here for hopping on the pod, joining us for the reunion special. He is the Miracle Man. He is at VM Center. You got your own show now these days, right?
I do. You guys can go and listen to it on iTunes. The Kings Court, covering the Sacramento Kings in depth. A new show coming out on Tuesday. We have 3 guests. One who covered Alec Burks with the Utah Jazz, covering Harrison Barnes with the Dallas Mavericks, and of course, a Kings beat writer will be joining my show to talk about the ramifications of or their acquisitions of these players. So it's going to be a big show on Tuesday. I have an NBA show called Game Time Decision where we have fantasy basketball shows and stuff like that. And you can also find that on that same exact channel until that iTunes feed actually is picked up by iTunes. Some big news, though, before I go, because I know I'm running short on time. Big news, guys. This is for my 2 amigos here. I want you guys to know this is also my invitation to you guys. At the end of this year, I will have a wife. I will be getting married later this year.
Congratulations, Miracle Man. You got 2 little youngins, so there you go. Put a ring on it.
You making me hit this mute button off. Good job, Vince. Way to go, man.
There you go.
Also, thank you. The Clippers are trading Mike Muscala to the Lakers for Michael Beasley, and something may be happening here.
Uh-oh. This is weird, but certainly it makes JaVale McGee better again. Or does it?
So
they
they
do. I got
trade
him in my
Zubac to the Clippers for Mike Muscala. That's essentially just an even swap for minutes and, you know, probably a little bit more opportunity for Zubac to get in there and do his thing. So I think he's on the radar as a standard league guy.
Wow.
Healthier than JaMychal Green. So, and Mike Muscala, I think he loses any fantasy appeal in LA.
What you got there, Vince, before I know you got to run?
I'm picking up Zubac over JaMychal Green, just so everybody knows. That's how low I am on JaMychal Green. You should be trying to go get Zubac if he's still on your wire right now. That's my opinion. I think he might be the starter on the Clippers and still have Montrezl Harrell coming off the bench.
Wow. The trade deadline continues to heat up. The great Vince Miracle getting married. Congratulations at VM Center on Twitter. Give him a follow. We got a shift change coming up here in just a second on the pod. But okay, so Marcin Gortat waived, Brew. Montrezl Harrell, Ivica Zubac are the two centers. Does that leave enough for Zubac to actually get in there and play more than 22, 23 minutes? He's not playing any power forward. I know that much.
It does, but here's my concerns right off the top. So he's a big-time pick-and-roll player, and he doesn't have a big-time pick-and-roll point guard. Maybe Shai Gilgeous-Alexander can be that guy for him. I think defenses are just going to go under on that. So this could be a case where his offensive numbers are not where you would want them to be. But then again, he's going to a place where there will be additional opportunity. I think it does dampen a little bit of the enthusiasm if he was playing with, I don't know. I don't want to say Rajon Rondo because
he was playing with Rajon Rondo.
He was playing with him, and nobody wants to play with that guy anyway. I guess the NBA players do, so whatever. He's still a standard league guy. Good landing spot. This is actually good for him, and it does add kind of the same amount of clarity that we had going, into that deal.
The other notes that are flying by right now, the Kings actually and the Blazers made sort of a low-impact trade. Caleb Swanigan sent to Sacramento for Skal Labissiere. Brew, I know he's one of the guys that you've liked in the past, so he's now a member of the Portland Trail Blazers. The Lakers also, with this trade, open up a roster spot, presumably for someone in the buyout market. Okay, I'll pivot back to a would you kind of thing here. Are you using a weekly move, because we're about 2 or 3 moves into our list right now on a guy like Zubac, or does he fall well behind some of the other guys we've talked about today, like a Delon Wright?
Only if I need a center, and that's it. Yeah, straight up.
So what's the max? And you may have said this before, but I'll beg you to repeat it if I missed it. What's the max number of minutes you think Zubac could carve out in Clipperland? Because he's like a younger, more mobile version of Marcin Gortat, and he wasn't able to play more than about 20 minutes a game.
Well, the hard part is you got to play him next to Montrezl Harrell, and neither of them are really threatening to shoot. And you also got a point guard in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander that doesn't shoot, and a point guard in Pat Beverly.
Is Shelvin Mack officially gone? Did I just see that too? Is this a for real tweet? Who's Michael Wallace? Grizzlies.com. It does sound like this is a real thing. Shelvin Mack to the Hawks for Tyler Dorsey.
Yeah, I mean,
so just
maybe the Hawks are looking to add a veteran point guard because they're getting rid of Jimmy Lin, which doesn't make sense.
So there must be some, I would think there are picks involved in this somehow, but these are both teams that are trying to acquire assets and not get rid of them. The great Mike Apotria is on with us now. Mike, welcome to the pod. I know, Brew, you've probably got to write a few of these things up, so I'll give you a second.
Thank you, sir.
Just at Mike Apotria on Twitter. One of my favorites here at the Hoob. He's on with us every Wednesday to talk DFS. You are on Mondays now, the weekly lineup show. Mike, it's not slowing down. It's speeding up right now.
This is the traction point. We're getting traction. We're starting to see some little moves that I think they're going to be like footprints for the bigger moves that are coming. And, we got a little bit of our mouths wet a little earlier. We got the Tobias Harris trade the other night, and, a couple of the Marc Gasol news. I was watching you guys cover that. This is going to be wild. And Brew all over Delon Wright. I don't see how Shelvin Mack leaving. doesn't make us want to go there even more.
Yeah, is this confirmed? It looked like it was from Grizzlies.com, but I haven't seen the rampant retweets about it. Is just that it was just such a low, like under the radar kind of deal that nobody cares? Because if this, I mean, getting rid of Shelvin Mack just means now you can play right at point guard even a little bit more.
Exactly, and he's athletic, and he was a first-round pick at one point. We have to remember this guy is crazy athletic. It's always been health has been his issue, but I do think I do think it's true because I'm seeing other beat writers, big ones, Chris Villamore and Kevin Chouinard. Those are two Hawks beat writers, both retweeting Michael Wallace's tweet. So
okay,
that's probably something that they're hearing or they're going to hear any minute, being right on the inside circle of that whole thing.
Man. So it doesn't really.
What would you just said it to?
All right, now it's official. We had a baseball trade on the NBA trade deadline today. I know nobody cares, but JT Realmuto is now a member of the Philadelphia Phillies. So the trade deadline applies to all on this marvelous February the 7th. Mike, what's going on, man? How you doing? I didn't get to say hi to you. We just launched right into stuff.
That's it, man. That's what we do here. It's so busy. Everything's moving parts right now. So we got guys coming on, guys hopping off, but the trades are happening either way. So we got to keep talking about them. But I'm doing great. I'm watching you guys, keeping me up, keep my coffee in hand while I look Kona coffee, always represent, and just ready to look forward to talk some more trades and check my Twitter feed every one. What does it say? See one new tweet. Let's check that out. Nothing.
That's why you got to get the tweet deck, man. It's just scrolling like crazy in front of me. This is okay. So I mean, I can't. I'm as a Laker fan, I'm slightly confused. I know Mike Muscala, you want more shooting ability to stretch the floor. They did not have a stretch 5 on the roster, and Mike Muscala can potentially fill that role. But now we're seeing rumors that they might be looking at Carmelo Anthony in the buyout market. I mean, this is wacky banana boat time. And you got rid of one of the guys that you could potentially have included in a trade. From a reality standpoint, Mike, I'm not fully certain what the Lakers are doing unless they truly believe they can compete for a championship this year, which feels far-fetched.
It really does, especially with just. I know we could say that these young players can get over what happened, but going back to what happened in Indiana, where these guys just looked out of it. They didn't even want to play with LeBron as a teammate. They were getting a chance at the free throw line saying LeBron's going to trade you. So it's easier said than done that even if this Anthony Davis trade doesn't happen, that everything's going to be smoothed over and they're just going to go back and try to compete for that 5 or 6 seed. But these trades are a little bit mind-boggling. I would have probably looked for a little bit more from Zubac. The limited time that he was starting and was seeing minutes, he looked good. I'm not rushing immediately to my wire to grab him in leagues. He does have that invulsion fracture that he's playing with right now in his finger, so he is a little hurt. That will heal, and I do think he's a better pickup than JaMychal Green. I'm going to have to agree with Vincent Brew on that one, too, and you.
Brew, I hopefully I bought you enough time on this one. I see the microphone is still muted, but I'm gonna force you back into the mix for a second here. What are the Lakers doing? And also, I want to ask you about Kent Bazemore, who we haven't heard his name pop up all that much. I'm sure the Hawks are attempting to move him, but they've also been keeping him on a pretty good minutes limit here lately. Is he a guy you're hanging on to in the hopes he can push it back into the mid-20s in minutes?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, he's a top 50 guy in 27 minutes per game. So what are we really talking about here? 23 minutes? If that was seriously the outcome, he's still giving you value. And it seems like he's kind of one of those guys as well that if he's only going to get 20 minutes per game, he might just concentrate on getting that value in those 20 minutes per game. Trae Young, he's going to play his minutes. Jeremy Lin, how much can he handle? Obvious question there. Shelvin Mack arrives in Atlanta. You're not probably worried about him entering the minutes equation. It'll be either he or Jeremy Lin. So we're really just talking about what we've always been talking about with them in Atlanta. Nothing doing with the John Collins injury from the other night, so you're not really worried there. Will Dwayne Dedmon get dealt? That's probably a big question because it would remove Omari Spellman from just 4 minutes and power forward minutes, that is, and move him into some center minutes, some backup center minutes, and then you bring in one of the many wings into the power forward realm, and you add about 20 minutes to the rotation that way. So, but long story short, I think you got a 4-man race there in Atlanta. You know, Bazemore, Prince, Huerter, and who am I missing there? Bembry. And I think along with that power forward minute boost, I think that you're going to see that happen. You know, you're looking at about 96, 110 minutes there for 4 guys. Quick math is about 25, 27 minutes per game for each guy. Give Kent Bazemore a little bit more because he's better than the other guys, and they probably want to pull back people like Bembry. Probably not Huerter. My God, I'll never get that name right.
I think it's just Herter, isn't it?
It's Herter, but it's not Herter. It's Huerter.
I like the accent.
That's right.
I mean, that's what it is. But anyway, so no, Bazemore, he's not getting dropped. I saw, in fact, Tama, you're going to pay because you go and you add Delon Wright. Well, guess what? The guy you dropped, I'm going to go pick him up as soon as I write this column up.
We also got a Woj tweet. It's an inverse. It's an anti-Woj bomb. Mike Conley will not be traded at the deadline.
Ooh,
it is
that's
official.
A blow for the Delon Wright situation.
Yes, and it's definitely going to be a boost for Conley. He's going to finish out the year on that garbage dumpster fire.
If he plays, is the question, right? They traded Shelvin Mack. They didn't trade Mike Conley. So what does this do? Is Delon Wright the starting shooting guard, or is that Avery Bradley? Not going to play as many minutes at the 1 now, I would think, but he could potentially see some backup minutes at that spot. Brew, how does this adjust Delon's future for you?
It puts him into backup minutes for, say, point guard, probably some backup minutes at really one of 3 positions. So, again, I don't think this changes. It's funny, you know, it's a blow to his upside, but I don't think it's a blow to his floor. I think that he still gets 22 to 24 minutes there. This is a really good player. I don't know if you guys remember last year's playoff series when he had something like, I forget, like 14 steals or some absurd amount of steals. It was really good for the Raptors in the playoffs. So he's got talent. 22 to 24 minutes. I know that's going to sound like a blow to his value. And we're also, you know, if Woj says that he's not being traded, there's a good chance that he's not being traded. But stranger stuff has happened, man. Stranger stuff has happened. Woj doesn't have a 100% hit rate.
No,
it's about true. 97.
That's true.
96. True. But yeah, 22 to 24 minutes, I think, are still in play. And for me, I like that. I want a low minute, high value guy 75, 85% of the time.
Jovan Buha, who covers the Clippers for The Athletic, tweeted that Ivica Zubac will likely be the starting center going forward. But again, you know, minutes thing does creep in with Montrezl Harrell sometimes seeing more run than the starting guy on that team. As we start to get all this stuff out, I'm trying to keep it all straight in my head and figure out who the guy is that needs to be used. And so now they're not even necessarily in would you use a move on a particular guy. I'm going to say would you use a last move on a particular guy, okay? You're now 3 out of your 4 moves into the week. Brew, Mike, in that order. The last move of the week from everything we've seen at the trade deadline so far. We still have 18 minutes left. Is it Delon Wright for you, Brew?
Who are my options again?
Anything that's happened related to the last week of trades, out of all of the stuff that's shaken out, is Delon Wright your top ad from that mix, even with Conley staying in town?
No, I think
Oh my God.
has always been.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I got to cut this one off. The Orlando Magic are trading for Markelle Fultz.
Oh.
Welcome, Brandon, to the show.
Oh man, I was about to break that. I'm like, I'll just let Dan do it.
Oh boy.
Holy moly. Okay, well, we're not done yet over here, folks. Markelle Fultz will be traded to the Orlando Magic. They got a point guard, but not one who's playing. It's not exactly what we were looking for in this one. All right, we'll loop back around to would you use your last pick on things. Obviously, we're going to get the details of what's going back in the Philadelphia direction. But Brandon Marcus, welcome to the show. And what do you think about the news that Markelle Fultz is headed to Orlando?
Oh, my goodness. I was about to log on, by the way, right when the Clippers-Lakers deal happened. I was so pumped to talk about that. And then, of course, for some reason, I couldn't join the hangout for 10 minutes. This is an interesting deal. I'm happy for Fultz, man. He needed to get the heck out of Philly. They need to give him a change of scenery. I'm really glad that he got that. and now he won't have much pressure on Orlando, and maybe they can fix him because he's a talented player. He was awesome at Washington, and he'll have the minutes. I mean, they're going to try and grow him and make him a starting guard eventually.
Mike, same question generally. I mean, what do we think might be on its way back? I mean, we'll find out in a minute here too, but this is obviously a move for the future for Orlando. I don't know. Does this change anything for anybody?
I mean, it definitely, like Brandon said, it's just a great change of scenery for Fultz. It's something that he needed. There was definitely some animosity over there in Philly for quite some time now, and I think it was dating back probably from before the season even started. There's no way to like go about it. We can't see who came back just yet. I'm gonna guess it was probably involving a pick.
Jonathan Simmons just came through. Jonathan Simmons is going the other way.
Well, there you go. They got another veteran wing, which is something that Philly needed. They needed to add some, a couple veterans after trading half their depth away. So Jonathan Simmons is a nice wing. He's going to help handle the ball. They have like 3 or 4 guys that are all interchangeable between like the 2 through 4 positions now. Where if any one of these guys happens to miss a game down the stretch, they don't necessarily have to worry about pushing them in positions that don't need to be. They can let their guys rest. They can get healthy for the playoffs. Philly's really gearing up, like you guys have been saying all day. We're seeing Philly, Toronto, and Milwaukee, the Eastern Conference. We would have never said it before, but they're gearing up. And I don't know, a couple of these teams might be top teams in the Western Conference, I think, obviously now.
Is this
Philly
not...
got some picks back, by the way, Dan.
Oh, okay.
So they got a first rounder that apparently is OKC's first. Yeah. And they got Cleveland's second-round pick. So they're recouping some of those picks that they lost in that Clippers deal.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because just getting Jonathan Simmons back for Markelle Fultz would have been an insane drop for a team that drafted this dude first overall. I mean, you're talking about a guy who was taken at the beginning of an NBA draft, potentially getting traded for Jonathan Simmons. But that's still, I mean, if you're Orlando and you believe in this kid, that's a pretty low price to pay. This is an extreme sell low moment for Fultz, isn't it?
I mean, dynasty leagues, it's a buy high league moment for me. I'm curious. What I'm waiting for, I think, the most out of this situation is, when he shows up in Orlando and he has to, see the doctors. What are they going to say? Are we going to hear something different than what was said in Philly? Is it going to be okay? Are they going to say, all right, now we have a timetable. We know what's going on. It's going to unveil some of this mystery that we all have been wondering about for like I'd say the past 6 months.
Brew, I've been giving you time to type on this one, but I got to come to you now. Markelle Fultz to the Orlando Magic. Your immediate reaction? No, he says no. I got to type a little bit more. All right, the mic is off. Brew, immediate thought.
I hate you, Dan. I'll fine. I'll answer your question. Somebody's gonna have to deal with the mental side of this. I'm sorry, you don't. I can't say with certainty that that's what's going on here, but just knowing kind of what we've seen out of him, it's definitely a big deal. I don't know that the change of circumstance is going to, address that. So if they have a plan of attack for that, then great. There is a player somewhere inside there, but, just looking at even his good moments for Philly, there wasn't anything transformative about his game. And we're talking about a team that's had point guard problems for the entire season. We've said that they need to get a point guard. It's really hard to watch them even. I don't know that he is a breakdown point guard. I don't think that he's going to put pressure on the defense in that role. So, I mean, yeah, you need a point guard. So you throw, you take a flyer on Fultz. I haven't seen the return. I heard you guys talking about it, but that's, I don't think it's anything that in a fantasy league I'm chasing. Yeah. I think if they play him 15 to 20 minutes and just sort of slowly ramp him up and get his confidence back going.
All right, gentlemen. Brandon at BD Marcus on Twitter. Thoughts on some of the other stuff that's going on today?
Let's talk a little bit of Clippers Lakers. I know I jumped in late on this one.
But, that's okay. You're a Clippers guy.
You're a Lakers guy. What exactly is going on here? Because the Clippers are clearly what they're doing is they're trying to free up cap space. That's why they did the Avery Bradley deal. Now they don't guarantee $2 million to him next year, so it makes more sense. Trying to clear some space. They get Zubac, who I thought was going to be a part of this deal for Anthony Davis eventually, but now you go ahead and trade him away for someone that is a role player. I don't get exactly what the Lakers are doing right now. It seems like this is typical Lakers panic mode right now, which is what we've seen before, and they're just scrambling to get stuff done.
Yeah, it's weird. I am a Lakers fan. I know that they wanted somebody who could stretch the floor at a big man spot. They're trying to sort of rebuild in the traditional LeBron James team when it was pretty clear from the summertime that putting all of these non-shooters around him was not a great idea. But I don't know why you trade a guy in Zubats who is not a great basketball player, but he was generating some measure of interest among places that maybe you could look to trade for a superstar down the lines. This is a weird move. This is a win now move for the Lakers, who I don't know that there's a great reason to win now. I always thought that they had set this season up as like, yeah, let's try to make the playoffs and have some fun, but we're growing the young guys and we're going to get another big name dude next off season. And this is a trading away an asset just to, I guess, get rid of Michael Beasley as well. I mean, Mike, what are you seeing on this one?
It's to me, it's almost comical because it's like, oh, you guys wanted Zubac in that trade, Pelicans. Well, we gave you guys everything. We're going to get rid of one piece at a time until you guys really start considering our offer.
It's like hostages.
It's almost like, yeah, it's almost like peeling off a Band-Aid very slowly on them until they say stop. So, I wanted to mention other news. Milos got waived as well. So, yeah, the Clippers they're clearing house right now. They just waived Milos. And then there's a report saying that the Knicks plan on holding on to DeAndre Jordan for the remainder of the season, but will grant Wesley Matthews his buyout once the deadline is over.
That's a KD move right there. That's a total KD move because DeAndre and KD are really close friends. So that's the only reason why they're keeping DJ, because they have no reason to do so with – I heard you guys talking earlier about Cornet and then obviously Mitchell Robinson. That seems like a total Kevin Durant move.
Yeah, and I still like Mitchell Robinson. I don't know that Luke Cornett's going to see the floor much the rest of the year. We saw Robinson play 22, I think, minutes in that last game, and he looked really good in it. But Cornet, to me, is basically toast. Do you guys agree on that front, Brandon?
Yeah, and they got to play DJ, by the way, because DJ's not a good person to sit on the bench because he will not be happy. He wears his emotion on his face, and if you're not going to buy him out, which they're not going to do, you have to play him. So if you're a DJ owner, you got to be happy with this news.
Mike, what are you thinking?
Absolutely. I think Cornet's going to be really tough to own. The only thing that he provides that the other two don't is a little bit of floor spacing. But even then, he's at best looking at 8 minutes to 10 minutes a game. There's no reason to really. He's a perfect candidate of a guy that you were holding to see how this was going to pan out. That's worthwhile dropping for one of these other guys that we mentioned, your Zubac, your DeLon Wright, one of those guys. But I'm happy if I'm a DJ owner. I'm also happy if I'm a Dennis Smith Jr. owner. Somebody else is going to finish at the rim and grab those oops and help with those assist numbers as well.
Mike, coming back to you, and we'll loop around on the news that the Lakers are strongly considering Carmelo Anthony for their open roster spot, which just feels like so. Okay, this could be two different things, and I'll get your feel on which one it is. Mike, you first. My thought is that this might be another time where LeBron is trying to salvage his friendship with Carmelo Anthony, and the Lakers are at the end of this probably going to go try to get Wayne Ellington or Wesley Matthews or someone who's a more of a shooter and more of a spot-up shooter and less of a ball stopper than Carmelo Anthony. But I guess there's the other side that they really are thinking about bringing in Carmelo Anthony to what? Back up Kyle Kuzma? I mean, this makes no sense to me at all. By the way, Wesley Matthews has agreed to a contract buyout, so we'll get to that in just 1 second. The Pacers apparently are the front runner, but nothing is set in stone yet. So, Mike, which one do you think it is with the Lakers? Are they actually interested in Carmelo Anthony, or are they just trying to keep him from being too upset and LeBron and Melo can drink wine in Brentwood in the offseason?
I'm leaning the latter if that's the way you're going to be honest. It doesn't seem like if there's a reason they wanted him, they could have done this for how long now? I guess maybe you wanted to see how the deadline unfolded. You didn't get your way. Now we're going to go look at Melo, but that's clearly not the answer. Or else it's something, like I said, you would have done immediately. Everybody knows his friendship with LeBron. They've been best friends since they both entered the league at the same time. And yes, I'm sure that has a part of it. They also be like, let's sign him for, I don't know. I was looking on Twitter the other day. I saw something about like a 4-year deal or something crazy. I hope that's not really true. If it's like a 1-year deal, let him finish out the season. They already know they're not really doing much here. Melo, try to earn yourself a contract going into the next year. Get some stats. Show the guys that you can still play. He's my friend. But
4-year deal. I think the three, it'd be 1 year of playing and then 3 years of like assistant to the GM. Brandon, same question. Do you think the Lakers are actually truly serious about Melo? I can't really believe that, but then they did also sign Michael Beasley. So,
are you guys following LeBron during his career? The guy needs veterans, and he needs players to win. He hates losing. I mean, look at what they just did with the Reggie Bullock trade. They traded away a pick. If this is a team that needs to try and get assets and use those assets in a possible deal eventually for Anthony Davis, you don't trade them away. LeBron hates losing. I would not be surprised at all if Carmelo Anthony ends up with the Lakers. It's just such a Lakers move right now. I'm telling you, the last couple of years that this has gone for LA, where if it doesn't go their way, now it's going to, Brew was talking earlier, it's plan C, and it seems like this is plan D.
I don't like Plan D as a Lakers fan. I am not a fan of Plan D at all. By the way, we are 6 minutes away from the trade deadline. Just want to make sure that staying up to date on everything so far. It seems like, and barring something popping up in the next couple of seconds, and usually there is something right around the noon mark. They slip that paper into the league office. The e-fax comes through at 11:59 and 58 seconds. Brandon, I'm going back to you on this one. I hate to say it as a Laker fan, but your Clippers are having one of the best deadlines in the league by successfully blowing things up and getting a lot of assets in return.
It's unbelievable. I mean, what they've put together now with expiring contracts, and then obviously they're getting these picks, and they have young talent. And kudos to the Clippers front office. They wanted to win, and they did. I mean, they were at the top of the West for a while. They knew that wasn't going to last. And now they're going ahead, and they're trading away pieces that they should be trading away. I wish they would go ahead and trade Gallo. I think that's the last piece, but I think his contract is too big. But fantasy-wise, I mean, I think SGA gets a huge bump now. I mean, if you look at a possible starting lineup now, Shea, Pat Beverly, Temple, Gallo, and Zubac. I mean, between those five guys, I mean, you go ahead, you add Zubac, and then you add Shea. I think those are the two guys that are big-time fantasy-wise.
Woj with a couple of small tweets going through, basically confirming that the Wesley Matthews buyout is happening, also confirming that the Enes Kanter separation could be complete as soon as today. I haven't seen any follow-up on the Kanter to Boston rumors. I'm thinking that may have just been floated.
It makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I could pick up a couple of. What if he ended up in like a Charlotte? They could desperately use someone to score in the front court. That's not Willie Hernangomez. Don't you want Willie Hernangomez with actual post moves? That's Enes Kanter. Might as well go that direction. I don't know what the right question is on this necessarily, but Mike, where do you see some of these guys potentially ending up? What if Wesley Matthews ends up in Indiana? Is he worth looking at?
Definitely. I mean, he's probably going to be thrown right into the immediate role. I mean, I don't think they want to continue starting Corey Joseph and Edwin Sumner. On the front of Enes Kanter, to me, if I'm the Celtics, that just doesn't make sense. Aaron Baines is on a phenomenal contract. He's just keep rolling with him. You know what I mean? He's a big man. I know he's hurt right now, but you don't need him to necessarily be that powerhouse rebounder that he is, but he can at least, defend a pick and roll. He's not a liability when he's on the court. And I think they saw that, well, let's trade for Greg Monroe. How'd that turn out when you trade a guy going to playoffs and he can't defend a pick and roll? He ends up sitting on the bench the entire series. So it's just not worth it to me. And it's one of those things where he's a great locker room guy. I love Kanter. I'm not knocking Kanter. When he's getting the minutes, he's a fantastic point per minute producer, especially for fantasy. But in real life basketball, his defense is his biggest hole. And on a team like the Celtics, I think they should have already learned their lesson.
Joe Varden tweets, I believe he covers the Cavs. No, that's not right. Not the Cavs. He covers somebody for The Athletic. I'll double back on this thing. He tweets that Rich Paul told him that Anthony Davis will not be traded today, that it is basically now confirmed he is staying put. And now we see if Anthony Davis can apply pressure to the Pelicans to potentially try to play. Very curious. It is, he's based in Cleveland, by the way. He doesn't cover the Cavs. So I was close. That saga will continue for a couple more months. I think it's what we all kind of expected at this point. But I swing it back around to you guys until anything else breaks here in our final 2 minutes. What do you think happens, Brandon? Do you think Anthony Davis can play the rest of the season? Can he force his way back in?
Yeah, I don't understand why not. Everyone realizes this guy has a year and a half left, right? I mean, it's not like he's becoming a free agent in the offseason. You can go ahead, you can trade him this coming offseason, or you can even wait until the deadline. The offers are not going to get worse if you wait longer. I know you were talking earlier on Twitter, Dan, about that possibly happening, where the offers could get worse as you go. But everyone's going to want Anthony Davis. It's not like at one point in time, all of a sudden, if you wait a little longer, then someone's value goes down. Just like in baseball, if you wait longer, then maybe you'll get less in return. I think the return is going to be the same no matter how long you wait. And if AD wants to play, the fans are going to want to see him. Might as well.
I agree. I'm 100% agreeing with Brandon right there. I think if he's not traded, he's eventually going to keep playing. Him and Drew are good buddies too. Drew's going to lobby for him. Come on, let us finish this out. Let's see what happens. And we all know how it works behind the scenes in the NBA. For all we know, we're not trading him now. They could have did a wink with the Celtics and shook a hand behind the scenes that there's nothing in paper, there's nothing happened where, God forbid he did go down with an injury, the Celtics could technically back out. But I think they're thinking long-term approach. I think a lot of teams, if they're looking at Davis, they're looking at this for the long-term approach, where even if he were, as long as barring a serious knee injury or serious injury, if it's a muscle strain or anything like that, they'd still trade for him without a doubt. Nothing like that's going to affect it.
Well, here's the thing also with the injury front. Everybody keeps talking, well, what if he gets hurt? Okay, then you wait a year, and he's still under contract with the Pelicans, and you trade him this upcoming deadline. You still have that timetable. That's why it's nice that it's a year and a half and not just a couple of months.
It's a great point.
Hey, Brew, you getting caught up over there? I haven't been able to signal you in a little bit. You thumbs up or thumbs down? Or no, you turned your mic back on. How you doing, big guy?
No, I didn't get caught up. What you got, Dan?
All right, see you later. No, I was just checking in on you, seeing what you thought of any of these. Not much in the way of late breaking stuff right now. I had a question related to Ivica Zubac, and now I can't remember what. Ivica Zubac and Thomas Bryant was something that was floating around in our chat room a little bit on the trade deadline show. Which of those two guys do you like for the more consistent role going forward?
The more consistent, that's going to be Zubac. It's already been leaked that he's going to get the starting job. I think 25 minutes is a pretty good target there. Maybe he can creep up into the 28-minute range, but I don't think you can play him and Montrezl Harrell together that much. As mentioned earlier in the show, you got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander can't shoot. Patrick Beverley can't shoot. There's a lot of non-shooters on the floor. So I think 25 minutes is a good target. And with the 25 minutes, I do think he'll be a late-round value. So that's pretty, bankable. You don't have to deal with the fluctuations. I personally would rather have the upside of Thomas Bryant, though.
All right, then. Doesn't look like anything is trickling in here in the last moments of the trade deadline, although we'll keep an eye on it.
I got something.
Oh,
nothing big.
It's not
small.
Is it the
minor?
Is it the indicted Jabari Bird trade to Atlanta?
Yeah. And the Hornets were not able to find a trade partner for Frank Kaminsky. That's kind of bad if you're Frank Kaminsky.
Oh no, poor Frank Kaminsky. I don't know what the Hawks are getting with this one. I guess we'll wait and see if whatever's going back the other way. Boston, I assume they wanted to get out from under the storyline here. I mean, Jabari Bird is being accused of strangling a woman. That's not a great look. Boston will send cash to cover Bird's deal and will receive a heavily protected second-round pick. Woof. So that's mostly a non-story. Minimal from the guys that we thought might move in Atlanta, at least, unless something happens in the next 2 or 3 minutes. Jeremy Lin, Dwayne Dedmon, Kent Bazemore. Those three guys were the ones that were supposedly being shopped. I like those guys for teams that needed to shore something up, but they didn't go anywhere. I guess the question here is, guys, do you think any of these guys get bought out? I think I saw a report that they'd like to just hold on to Dwayne Dedmon the rest of the way. They like his leadership and what he does with some of the young guys as kind of a smart center, defensively, offensively, whatever. Mike, I'll come back to you first on this one. Do you see anything shaken out for Atlanta the rest of the way, and what does that mean for some of these veterans?
It's hard to imagine it after the deadline passing, because I'm sure they're a rebuilding team. They would have wanted something in return if they could have got anything in return, whether it was a second-round pick or a first-round pick or just a young guy that didn't pan out somewhere else. But I do think that Dedmon is a positive influence on the Hawks team, especially when you have a young guy like John Collins playing next to him every game. We've known this in fantasy. John Collins struggles getting defensive stats, struggles with a little bit of the defensive rotations in his footwork, and that's probably something that they preach over there, I'm sure, in San Antonio when Dedmon was over there. So it's something that he can bring to this team, and he can finish it out. He's still getting paid. It really does, though, hurt the value of all these wings. You know, I'm going to go with Brew on this one before. Huerter is probably one of my favorite guys. Looks like they're just committed to playing this guy 30 minutes a night, regardless of who's healthy. Prince is back in that starting lineup. But, I mean, at the end of the day, the real guys that we're looking to own are still going to be John Collins, still going to be Trae Young, and then we're going to sprinkle in these wings, you know, here and there, depending on what stats we need.
Brandon?
There are so many guys that are just on the fringe with Atlanta, and it's so tough to know who exactly you want. I mean, you want Collins, obviously, and then apart from that, Dedmon will pop off from night to night. Huerter we've talked about. You just don't know and trust right now. My biggest problem. I think Bazemore will get an opportunity to get bought out. I'm sure he could help out a team defensively. There's really no need for him to be there, considering the Hawks are going to lose by 20 to 30 each night. So yeah, I just think it's a wait and see and who goes. But like Mike, I mean, Mike and I have talked about this a lot. Dedmon's a nice guy to have in terms of contributing threes, steals, blocks. They'll give you points and rebounds as well. But you just don't know how many minutes all these guys are going to play as the Hawks continue to lose.
Yeah, that is absolutely the big question. Brew, I know you're squinting at your screen over there, but I'd love to get the big dog's view on what happens with these Atlanta veterans as the trade deadline passes and they're all still there. Lots of questions in the chat room about Bazemore, plenty of questions about Dwayne Dedmon. Is the only move with these guys just to hold on and see if their minutes can either for Dedmon sort of remain and for Baze to get back up? Are we thinking buyout potential? What are you looking for? You've watched deadlines more than we have, and what does sort of reading the tea leaves tell you?
I don't think you're going to see a buyout for Kent Bazemore. That would be an incredible piece on the buyout market if that was the case. I don't think he'd make it past waivers, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say. You know, we like to make fun of Bazemore around the league, or I think others do. You know, this is a quality basketball player that, you know, I wouldn't pick him apart, put it that way. So I don't think he's going anywhere. I also don't think that the team is going to turn away from Taurean Prince. You know, I think that it's kind of unfair with that ankle injury, which was pretty serious, to hold certain performances against him lately. So I think you're going to see Kevin Huerter make sure that he's getting his 30 minutes per game, or the Hawks are going to make sure he's getting his 25 to 30 minutes per game on most nights. And then, you know, Baze probably settles into 25, 27 minutes. I think Prince settles in around 30. I think the guy that's losing here is Dwayne Dedmon, or probably not Dedmon. That other guy.
Bembry?
Bembry, thank you. My God, needs more coffee. Bembry, and we still don't know about Dedmon yet, if he's going to leave the rotation and open up a few minutes that way. But yeah, Bembry is too inconsistent, I think, to take minutes from Prince and Bazemore at this point in time. Maybe they go full tank at the end of the year and start to, you know, bring those guys back a little bit. But outside of a trade that comes through after the deadline, I just think those four guys are going to rotate in those two positions and, you know, hover around 25 minutes per game. So Prince, you know, is probably a buy low moment for him because I think the market's pretty soft on him.
What do the rest of you gentlemen think on that?
I mean, Prince was a guy that most, you know, I know we were high on, had him coming into this year as a top, I think, 50, 60 guy easily. You know, we saw a lot of upside. We saw a lot of opportunity on this Hawks team that likes to run and likes to lose by a lot. So they're not afraid to give up points if they're going to be running down the floor and scoring just as many. So, you know, I know this isn't DFS, but like I've always said when we're talking about on the shows, this team pushes it. This team pushes the pace, and they will score points. It's miraculous how many points that they have at the end of the night. You wouldn't think, looking at the roster, that it was capable of it. But Trae Young has evolved, and as a passer, we've seen over the season, he's been dishing assists lately. He looks really good. He's been shooting the ball better, and now we're going to see, I think, going forward, maybe a little bit more stability with Prince, Bazemore, Huerter. All these guys are helping. They want to get these guys comfortable playing with at least some of the pieces that they know they're going to be there for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and there's so many mouths, though. I mean, who do you trust? That's the one thing, is night to night, who do you trust, especially with DFS? I mean, you really don't know who's going to go on and do well from night to night. And I owned Taurean Prince in a head-to-head league, and there's 9 categories, and I dumped him. And he hasn't shown me anything since coming back to prove that he's worth a spot when there are other guys like Bridges, guys I think I trust a little bit more.
All right.
That's an excellent point too. Bridges is a guy that I was very skeptical of him at first. Very, very skeptical.
We both were.
I was not a believer. It's not I wasn't a believer in his game. I think he's an excellent player. I think he has a bright future. I just didn't think he was going to insert himself into the offense like he has lately. Devin Booker going down here and there has definitely aided to his confidence, I'm sure, when they're saying we're playing you 35 minutes regardless. Don't worry about missing shots. Don't worry about making mistakes. Just go out there and play. This is your time to learn. So I think he's really starting to, some guys have sophomores or, freshman slumps later on in the year. They start to hit that freshman wall, the rookie wall. But I don't think that's happening with guys like Bridges. I think he's getting a little bit more comfortable and he's kind of stepping out.
So this is that reminder was not what I was about to say, but I will say now that this is the point where I will actually be porting out the last 50 minutes of this show into today's episode of Fantasy NBA Today. So for those of you that, if you have to go, I will allow it. I'd rather you stay for the duration. But from this point until the end, that'll be available via traditional podcast channel. So that's coming up here, and I will take a moment to say, welcome to Fantasy NBA Today, the final 50 minutes of the trade deadline show. We've had a fun day, as always. We've had some big moves. We've had some little ones. Doing our best to keep all of that straight. This is, again, the final 50 minutes of the live show and available to those of you as well on the traditional podcast channels. I haven't paused in a little bit here to just give a kind of a brief rundown of what we got going on, just because there were a bunch of trades coming in and wanted to make sure we didn't miss anything. But this is the Hoop Ball 2019 Trade Deadline live show. We started at 9 this morning Pacific time, running until 1 p.m., so a 4-hour show without commercial interruption. But that doesn't mean that I can't tell you this show is brought to you by Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. HawaiianIsles.com is the website. They're running a coupon right now for those of you enjoying this live show. It's Hoop Ball. Punch in that coupon at HawaiianIsles.com. You get 15% off of your order. I think that actually should probably be functional now. Glenn's been hard at work over there getting everything set up. At HI Kona Coffee on Twitter. You can also find them on Amazon by just searching for Hawaiian Isles. Mike, I know you're a massive fan of them as well. We've got Mike Apatria, Brandon Marcus, and Aaron Brewski for this segment of the show. The In This League guys coming up in 20 minutes. They'll help us close this thing out from 12:30 to 1 in the afternoon. It sounds like there may be a trickling going on here. Yes. Trickle. We got the trickle. The Moose, Greg Monroe, is headed to the Brooklyn Nets. That's our post-trade deadline move of
like Beetlejuice. As soon as they said his name before.
Yeah, you got him to Brooklyn. Okay, well, we'll break it down. I mean, hell, we broke everything else down, so we'll break this one down. The Moose, does he play in Brooklyn at all? Mike, I'll go to you first on this one.
I doubt it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him waived. But who knows? They could always use another guy behind Jared Allen. Jared Allen, they seemingly won't play him over 30 minutes unless he has one foul going into the fourth quarter. So maybe they just want another big body because it kind of complements his little smaller frame, I guess. But like I said before, it doesn't take long for teams to figure out when Greg Monroe or Enes Kanter are on the floor and how to take advantage of it fast. So.
Ed Davis is already there, by the way. So
yeah.
I mean, like we talk about him all the time, rebounds, and Ed Davis is the backup there. I think Mike's right. I think this is about the draft pick more than anything, since it's Monroe and a second rounder to Brooklyn.
This is, of course, Mike Apatria, Brandon Marcus, Aaron Brewski. You can follow all of us on Twitter. At Dan Bespers is my own. At Aaron Brewski, you know those ones. At BD Marcus on Twitter. And at Mike Apatria. Yeah, I mean, you got Ed Davis there. You got the pick. That's obviously the big piece of this puzzle. And for Toronto, they just, I mean, I guess that they didn't feel like they needed an additional big man. Moose didn't play much this year anyway, but it was basically a 1-for-1 big man swap earlier in the day, and I want to get to that now. Barring anything else trickling in, a quick recap, so all of you guys get a break now. You can all take a deep breath. Here are all of the trades that I've written down, and it's quite conceivable that I've missed one. So at the end of this list, you guys feel free to tell me what I biffed. Going all the way back to the beginning, the lead up to the trade deadline, we'll start with the Porzingis deal and work our way to later today. This is not entirely in chronological order, but sort of. Okay, I'm going to do like the Ace Ventura deep breath before I go into this thing. Porzingis, Tim Hardaway Jr., Trey Burke, and Courtney Lee for Dennis Smith Jr., DeAndre Jordan, and Wesley Matthews. Clippers and Philly, Tobias Harris, Boban, Mike Scott for Landry Shamet, Wilson Chandler, and Mike Muscala. Washington sent Otto Porter to the Bulls for Bobby Portis and Jabari Parker. They also sent Markieff Morris to New Orleans for Wesley Johnson. Sacramento and Dallas exchanged guys. Harrison Barnes on his way to Sacramento for Zebo and Justin Jackson. Sacramento also involved in a small trade today that sent Skal Labissiere to Portland for Caleb Swanigan, and a 3-team deal earlier that sent Iman Shumpert to Houston. Marquise Chris and Brandon Knight ended up with the Cavaliers, and Alec Burks ended up with the Sacramento Kings. Phoenix and Miami involved in largely a salary dump on the Miami side. They got rid of Tyler Johnson and Wayne Ellington and picked up Ryan Anderson. It remains to be seen what Phoenix does with the other names. With Wayne Ellington, sounds like he's a buyout candidate, especially now that he hasn't been traded by the deadline. Philadelphia sent got Malachi Richardson and then promptly waived him. That was in a low-profile deal with Toronto. Reggie Bullock is a Laker. They sent Svi Mikhailiuk to Detroit, along with a pick. Thon Maker and Stanley Johnson were set to be exchanged, but now thanks to a secondary deal that sent Stanley Johnson and Jason Smith to the New Orleans Pelicans, that actually became a 3-team deal where Maker ends up in Detroit, Johnson and Smith end up in New Orleans, and Niko Mirotic ends up with the Milwaukee Bucks. James Ennis was sent to the Philadelphia 76ers in what ended up being a second-round swap with Houston. Let's see, what do we got? Nick Stauskas got traded again. He ended up in Indiana at the end of all of this stuff, as did Wade Baldwin. They started this whole thing in Portland, and it sort of doesn't matter what happened in between those two. JaMychal Green and Garrett Temple to the Clippers for Avery Bradley. Marc Gasol to the Grizzlies for Jonas Valanciunas, Delon Wright, and C.J. Miles. The Lakers and Clippers sent guys to different teams, but none of them had to go anywhere. They'll get new jerseys soon. That's Ivica Zubac and Michael Beasley for Mike Muscala. Shelvin Mack was sent to the Atlanta Hawks and was promptly waived for Tyler Dorsey. Wesley Matthews appears to have been bought out, and Boston sent Jabari Bird and money to the Atlanta Hawks for effectively nothing, a protected second-round pick, which means that's going to be way at the end of drafts, if at all. Okay. Did I miss anything?
I think you nailed it.
I'm tired.
Can you do it again? I didn't get it the first time. Just go one more time.
Thanks, Mike. I'm gonna off you guys. I need a break from talking. So this is the part where we sort of go through and talk about our favorite moments of trade deadline day, in particular for the fantasy market. By the way, Brew tweeting that Detroit is actually going to be trying to sign Wayne Ellington after he's bought out. That's an interesting twist after trading away Reggie Bullock. I guess they figure they can get a shooter back to kind of fill his spot on the roster. But without getting into Wayne Ellington, Brandon, I'll go to you first on this one. The fantasy players maybe from today that emerged as the biggest winners and losers. This is what we were going to get into before a couple of the trades trickled in at the end. And you can even talk about guys that are already owned, because for me, a guy like Marc Gasol is a huge winner because he's no longer a shutdown candidate. But we've obviously talked about guys like Delon Wright as well. Who jumps out to you as your favorite stories of the day?
Well, I've written down a couple of those for biggest winners, because I know people are in the chat. They're trying to figure out who to pick.
Right.
And I think there are several guys right now that are all close together. I'm curious to get everybody's take on this in terms of where they rank everybody. You look at Thomas Bryant, obviously. The question is, are you concerned about Bobby Portis and how many minutes Portis will play, and will that eat into Bryant? I mean, Bryant was great yesterday, playing 30+, but is Scotty Brooks going to go and play him 18 the next game? We just don't know. But I think that's a guy we have to go ahead and look at as Bryant. I like Wright, but now that Conley's staying there, that really tempers my expectations on him. I know Brew was talking very heavily about him earlier. I'm not sure if, Bruce, you still think that's the case with Wright being a nice add with Conley there. And Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, like I was talking about before, I think he gets now the reins to that Clippers team, and he can shoot more than people think. He's good at scoring three. He gets his points, his rebounds, his assists. He gets steals and blocks because he's so long. So I do like SGA a lot. And Zubac, like you were talking about, I mean, he has minutes at center now. It's just him and Harrell that I think will split that time. So those are the biggest guys that stand out to me. It does worry me as a Harris and Butler owner what's going to go on in Philly, but I do think that Brett Brown finds a way to play all those guys and separate them so that Harris can still get some minutes and still get some numbers. I think the bench will mean a lot less for Philly because those guys are there and they can contribute if they're spread out.
Mike?
I'm on board with a lot of the same things you said. I have Conley being one of my biggest winners of the day. It's somebody that's already owned in every single fantasy league, obviously, but knowing that he's still going to be playing for the Grizzlies for the rest of the year, as long as he's playing every game like he should be, which, I mean, the team's pretty much going to lose games even with or without Conley. The guy's unreal, but we've seen, I guess, what a pissed off Conley looks like playing over the past few weeks, and he's been playing unreal. And given that Marc Gasol's usage is going to be gone, Ivan Rob's going to be playing in that lineup. Ivan Rob's not a usage guy. Jaren Jackson's still a young guy, so he's probably going to flirt with, like, I would say high 20s usage from this point on. And then like Brandon said, Zubac looks like he's going to have that starting role. I would say he's locked into at least 24 minutes. And like Bruce said, if it gets to that 30-minute mark, he's a guy that you're going to wish you added if you didn't. So sometimes taking a flyer, if you have a guy on the end of your bench, it's not like you're taking a flyer on something that will never pan out. 24-minute Zubac can be good, but you're also taking a flyer on him getting 30. And if that were to happen, he's a guy that's going to be a must-own player.
And then, Brew, I'll come back over to you on this one. We were trying to buy Aaron some time to catch up on all the Wire stuff as he adds notes to the article over at hoop-ball.com. I would suggest everybody listening go check that out to get all this stuff in writing in a place where you can remember it very quickly. Brew, your biggest winners and or losers from trade deadline day or trade deadline week. You can do roll the whole thing in together.
Yeah, let me take my Ace Ventura breath over here.
Yep.
And I did get caught up, so I'm very happy.
Outstanding.
Winners. You know, I hesitate to call Conley a winner or a loser because I think it could go either way for him. He has not played a lot in the last 2 years. So we saw with Marc Gasol last year, he played through what was a lost season. And so they could absolutely just trot him out there and he could put up top 30 numbers and do that for the rest of the year. And at the same time, he could get a mild injury and they could decide, hey, it's not worth aggravating this. And, you know, we want to tank and all that good stuff. So he could go either way. You know, I think Delon Wright is a winner. I think that Zubac is absolutely a winner. I think some of the stuff that happened in the last couple of days might have been more consequential. You know, Otto Porter going to a new team, Lauri Markkanen, like that guy was already locked into big time value, but now he loses a lot of minutes around him, you know, with Bobby Portis and Jabari Parker.
Oh, when you say loses minutes, meaning other guys went away. So
exactly.
he actually
losing minutes, you know, from other players there. Not as big of a, you know, there wasn't that big splashy pickup this year. I think Wright might have been that guy. And correct me if I'm wrong. Am I missing a big splashy pickup here?
Not real. I mean, you know, Wright, JV seems to be a big winner, but he should be owned, especially with his return so imminent as well. I mean, you got a couple guys in Dallas that look like pretty decent pickups, but yeah, it doesn't seem like there's that one guy that just dropped himself into a top 50 spot. Mike, Brandon, do you guys agree, disagree?
No, I agree.
I can't see anybody. I think it's more impacting guys who we already owned, guys who are going to see a little bit of usage ticks. Maybe like, you know, Delon Wright, he's probably one of the guys that wasn't owned in any leagues that is now worth it. And Zubac was kind of getting picked up recently. So I guess if you're still out there, grab him. Woj just tweeted that the Bulls are working on a buyout right now with Robin Lopez. So that would actually get rid of another center on their team. And that might stir some things up a little bit.
Lakers are probably in the market for a center these days. Just saying, maybe go another Lopez route. I'm okay with that. I wonder where that dude ends up.
Well, the buyout market's going to be pretty hot this year.
Yeah.
And so that's going to almost be a little mini trade deadline of its own. But to Mike's point, yeah, a lot of guys that were already owned are getting big chances here. Tim Hardaway Jr. is one of those guys. The ads, you know, Powell, Kleber, you know, they were definitely on the radar a couple days ago. Beyond that, you know, sort of going through my article here, looking at the list, seeing if there's, you know, anything, you know, major. I think Patrick Beverley is an under the radar winner, you know, because he can carry on potentially with mid-round value. That team, you know, we've seen Beverley in the past go on tears like that. So he could absolutely be a winner. I'll be updating my article with a little bit more.
I hope so, man. You know, I picked up all the old man Bev when he started to get hot.
I mean, some Lakers, I guess, are winners because they didn't get dismantled over there. It's Jaren Jackson Jr. might be the biggest winner, actually.
It's a great point.
He's going to be on a top 30 pace. And that's what everybody's had such a great run with him as a draft pick, even not getting as many minutes as maybe folks had hoped early on, but just really producing with those minutes. Jonas Valanciunas is a huge winner here. Really excited that I think hoop ball owners have a lot, presuming they were able to hold on of Jonas Valanciunas.
I actually scooped him in a league where he got dropped by an impatient owner. I am stoked right now.
Great pick.
Julius Randle holds on here.
Hey, yeah, let's talk Pelicans too. Although Shams, by the way, tweeting that it sounds like Wesley Matthews to the Pacers is basically a done deal right now after his buyout.
Ooh,
so that
ugly.
That's a weird spot. Obviously, he slots into Victor Oladipo's shooting guard spot. It seems like this likely pushes Tyreke Evans back out of the starting lineup. Brew, am I reading that right?
I would think so. I mean, why go there if you're Wes Matthews if you're not guaranteed some minutes? Or it could mean that they don't think that Doug McDermott can hang. But again, you're Wesley Matthews. You've been playing 30 minutes per game for a long time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're a mild contender, but heck, I mean, in the buyout market, could theoretically he land with the Warriors or another team? I mean, that's you go for your best opportunity if you're Wesley Matthews. So yeah, Tyreke Evans probably gone and maybe even waived and also on the buyout market.
Did they? How many years did they give that dude? That part I don't remember. I feel like it might have been 2.
I think it might have been 2.
Yeah, so that's a tough one. It's a wind down here on trade deadline day, but I do want to talk Pelicans because there was a chance that they might end up with nothing after the trade deadline. There was Nico on the market. There was Randall on the market. There was Peyton on the market. There was Etuan Moore on the market. There was, of course, the Anthony Davis saga, and the only Pelican to get moved was Nico Mirotic. So, Mike, I'll start with you on this one. Presumably the 5 guys that they were all holding out, some of those dudes are going to play again, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm with Brandon on that. Davis does return this season. It's going to be so weird just not, having one of these situations where the guy's perfectly healthy, sitting out when he wants to play. His teammates want him to play. Yes, he had a little run-in with the front office, but Brandon made an excellent point that he does have a year and a half left and not a year. So, worst case scenario, a serious injury does happen to him. They can still get rid of him with a half year left on his contract when he's coming back. But Randall, if Davis is back, he's definitely going to play. He's definitely going to probably see at least 30 minutes a game. So if we're seeing Davis and Randall, it's going to, damper expectations a little bit on Okafor, but he's not a guy I'm dropping anytime soon. I'm waiting to see how this pans out. He has tremendous upside, and we've seen that already.
Brandon, same question on the Pels.
I don't think we know until we see what happens with Anthony Davis. I mean, that's the key. Will Anthony Davis come back? I think the biggest winner, of course, is Randall, because now you have Miro out, and we've seen this season that when it's just 2 of the 3 guys together, that they eat big time. And so I think Randall gets a big time boost, and you just don't know who else will end up doing stuff. I mean, Okafor, I was really skeptical initially. I thought that was going to be his only double-double the first time he came out, and he came out and was fantastic for a couple of weeks. I just don't think we know, and it's so tough now, especially in fantasy leagues, because you don't know who you want to drop, who you want to add, because if you want to hold on to a guy and hope that he does something, then you're missing out on somebody else. I mean, we don't know how many minutes Valanciunas is actually going to get. I mean, do we actually think that Memphis is going to play him a bunch? We don't know. I mean, is Karis LeVert going to come back healthy? There's so many guys that are fringe players, and you're going to end up picking up somebody that's going to help you, but then you could miss out on somebody else by holding on to somebody that ends up doing nothing.
The Enes Kanter buyout is apparently about to happen as well, although we don't have any lead potentially on where he's going to end up. Someone's going to want to take a chance on a guy that I love, Kanter. And we've talked about this. I think that he's incredibly entertaining, but he has tended to rub folks the wrong way a little bit over the entirety of his career. Brew, coming back to you on the Pelicans front, I would have to think that guys like Elfrid Payton and Etuan Moore, they almost definitely have to get back in there and play, right? Because, I mean, you can't just rest your entire starting 5. Anthony Davis is obviously the big question mark, but who do we think you see on the floor, Brew, for New Orleans now that the trade deadline is passed and only Nico Mirotic has been moved.
Well, I think you see a lot of Julius Randle, as discussed earlier.
Right.
I think Jahlil Okafor fits in as a very, 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 very poor man's Anthony Davis, but he's played well. and all, I kid, but props to him for coming into the season in shape. I think he dealt with a lot of stuff off the floor where he got his mind right, and anybody that does that has my, has my praise. And now for the rest of them, you got to see what Stanley Johnson is doing here. I can't recall, was he going to be waived? Or is he there?
I think he's there for now.
Yeah, I got a little confused there for a second, but he could theoretically fit in there, and Kendrick Williams has been playing really well, so they kind of cancel out each other in my mind. Each one more, whether he was hurt for real or hurt as a trade deadline possible tradee. He's obviously a guy that in the past 30 minutes per game has been able to put up top 130 numbers in that range, so he's completely serviceable. Drew Holiday is going to get all he can eat unless there's an injury that he doesn't want to play through, or that the Pelicans don't want him to play through. Got a big deal, so you got to protect him there. Elfrid Payton, he just hasn't been able to stay on the floor this year. Is he a part of their future? Is he effective enough to get somebody like Frank Jackson off the floor? Somebody that the Pelicans want to do well. So you have Jackson, you have Tim Frazier. You have this sort of mishmash of players that could pop up and be like years past, where you get a Luke Babbitt alert, on your phone. It says Luke Babbitt alert. Go pick up Luke Babbitt, and then you win your fantasy league.
Remember that? That was like the first podcast we ever did, Brew.
Wasn't it?
That was one of them.
Yeah, he was a hoop ball guy there for a little bit. So that's the Pelicans in a nutshell. I mean, Markieff Morris is probably the guy that you might think's under the radar, that might be interesting. You might consider stashing in a deeper league that's competitive, where you're just looking for somebody that could get minutes on a bad team. Randall, though, is going to probably play like 32 minutes per game. He's going to go off. I think he'll probably be an early round player the rest of the way.
Brandon and Mike, I know we got to bid you guys farewell, so I want to give you a massive thank you. Brandon Marcus and Mike Apotria. You can find them both on Twitter at BDMarcus, at Mike Apotria. They are among our cavalcade, our cavalry, our massive stable of fantastic hosts here at hoop-ball.com. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
The Trade Deadline live show is not done yet, folks. We got a half an hour left, and I want to welcome in his lordship. What's up?
What's going on, fellas? Exciting day. A little disappointed that we didn't get an Anthony Davis trade, but the Rockets got him on Shumpert, so what more can a man ask for?
Much, much more.
Well, let's see. You're a Rockets guy. You guys traded away James Ennis. You got Iman Shumpert. They were involved in something else, weren't they? My mind.
Yeah, it was the Stauskas and Wade Baldwin salary dump.
Yeah. Okay, so not a ton of changes. It seems like with the Rockets, the key for them was just getting Chris Paul back and healthy, and then Clint Capella next, because they were gonna find like a Trevor Ariza floating around, and that's what the whole Rockets narrative has been like. Where can we find our next Trevor Ariza? And the answer is probably not another Trevor Ariza, but I think you'll be okay.
I wish it would have been Trevor Ariza. By the way, just as we're doing this, looks like Enes Kanter just did get released.
All right.
So he's gone.
Well, now we wait to find out the magic of Enes Kanter.
It's going to be depressing no matter where he lands, because he provided so much entertainment on the NBA Takeaway show, because he would just say something ridiculous or do something nuts every single day. So it was like half my show was Enes Kanter, so that's disappointing.
Did you get a chance to talk about he thought he was being called to go into the game? I forget what there was a story that was circulating. Maybe somebody in the chat room can fill it in on this. That Fizdale was calling for someone else on the team, and he thought they had said Ennis, so he went to the scorer's table, got told he wasn't going in, and then like gave himself a high five as he went back to the bench or something like that. I mean, it was like literally up until the very last second with the Knicks, he was entertained.
I'm not surprised at all. I hadn't heard that, but I am not even a little bit shocked. That's amazing. So how has the coverage been, Dan? I mean, you've been here for a long time, right, Brew?
Yeah.
How long have you been on today?
because I woke up well after you guys started. So
we've been here the whole way through. Go ahead, Brew.
I was say I may or may not be wearing an adult diaper. You know, we're having a sit-in.
My kid left and returned from preschool during the time we've been on air. I think I just heard them get back home. 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., 4 hours of pandemonium over here. There were these brief lulls where I started to think, oh, man, what am I going to talk about now? And every time that happened, something silly took place. What are your highlights and lowlights from the deadline, Bogman? We haven't been able to talk to you since almost any of this stuff started. By the way, I'm very sorry that I couldn't do a big three this week.
Oh, no worries, man. I know you're swamped here, of course, but I mean, I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Markelle Fultz in Orlando. I think that's my my biggest takeaway here today is you know, I mean, we know Marc Gasol is going to be good in Toronto, you know, but I want to know, like, how quickly is he going to be recovered, you know, from his stuff? And is it really just getting out of Philly? And we've talked about this on the Big Three constantly, Dan, about how desperately the Magic need a point guard. So when is he going to be able to come in and fill that role? And what is it going to look like when he does? I think that's the thing I'm most excited for.
What about some of the players changing hands? Which was the trade that, well, you talked about Fultz and you know, we don't know if he's going to play. It will be really interesting. I will, to follow up on that, it'll be super interesting if he suddenly just is playing again in like a week. That would lend a lot of credence to the fact that it was always sort of between the ears and just needed a change of scenery, or do they hold him out? I mean, it seems like the Magic are still fighting for that always enviable 8 seed in the Eastern Conference. What do you think about the Gasol deal? Memphis able to mostly blow it up, but they did hold on to Conley, who signed for another, I think, year or two.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I like that trade for them. I know it was more about getting Gasol, you know, off the books and all that stuff, but I've never been a huge Valanciunas fan. You have Valanciunas on like all your teams this year, don't you?
I do, yeah. I wanted him as like my nice, safe, nice percentages center who doesn't really hurt you in any place, and he was cruising along. He was doing his top 90 thing in like 19 minutes, and with Memphis, the excruciating pace they play actually probably helps a guy like JV, since they've been accommodating a big lumbering center for years now. I mean, if he gets up to even 23 minutes, he could be a top 75 guy. I know, Brew, you have a lot of JV as well. He was a big hoop ball guy this year. He's got to be among some of the big winners, I would think, today, since he slots into a spot where JaMychal Green, Marc Gasol both just left, and Ivan Rabb is sort of the only other center. Okay, fine, Joakim Noah, but let's be honest about this. So, Brew, you got to be kind of happy about JV too, right?
I am. First, before I talk about this, big shout out to Mike Passador for holding down the fort on Words today.
The Panda. The most Can I say he's the most underfollowed person on Twitter? Let's make it our life's goal to get the Panda up to a reasonable number of Twitter followers. The world needs to know.
He's like Kaiser Sose, man. He's so deadly. So deadly.
He is
lets your mind going, and the work he just did on the wire, I'm just looking at some of it right now, is absolutely amazing. So shout out to you, Panda, and follow him at Mike_Pandador.
Yeah.
Pandador, DOR. And just bug him. You know, we want him to talk more on social media. Just bug him.
Yeah.
You know, tell him I sent you.
That's right. Bruce said we're supposed to annoy you considerably. So what?
But Valanciunas, like, the thing about Valanciunas was there was the Clint Capellas and the DeAndre Aytons, and probably missing somebody there, that were your 3rd and 4th round picks that everybody's going after, and you would have to really take a chance on somebody if you didn't take JV at this nice and cheap price of like what, 6th round, 7th round, and you had that low minute solid production that you know, you knew that you were going to get that, but then what if something happened and he was able to somehow get more minutes? And you were really looking at Serge Ibaka, would his knee act up, you know, and would that be the thing that got him into 24, 25 minutes per game? Now you're going to get it in Memphis. So that hand injury, this has been a year of hand injuries or thumb injuries where these are just completely random things. you can't attribute. They can't go into a season and be like, that dude's gonna get a thumb injury. Like it just doesn't work like that. So you got hit. And my teams, it's funny. I was just cruising in first in so many leagues, and then I got JV got hit, Capella got hit, and I was slowly like, wait a second, what's going on here? You got running out of gas, and now you get him back, and he could easily be a top 40 guy going forward.
I love it. So I'm so excited.
Also,
about
I got to shout out Zach Feldman. And what up? We got a code for you, Zach. It's Hoopball. For the Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee. He asked about that earlier.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Zach Feldman's one of our great young writers here. Doing good stuff.
What a cast of characters. Don't worry, I'll give everybody a shout out as we're wrapping this thing up in about 21 minutes or so. So Bogman, I'm coming back to you since we've able to haul in the ITL for this the tail end of this thing. I know you're a man who likes to sleep in a little bit.
Hey, where's the Welsh at?
The Welsh is actually at his work right now, so he could not make it happen. I apologize for him.
Bruce coming for
I'm mad.
Welsh.
I'm just mad. That's all.
Well, hey, I like that hoodie that you got on.
Hey, you know what? Thank you. You're the first person that's commented on my great attire. I got the blazer with the hoop ball hoodie, you know, and you see this on the sidelines in the NBA. You know, all you got to do is get a blazer. You're good with the dress code.
That's right. Yeah. Well, Dan told me to wear a collared shirt, so I picked up the most wrinkly one I could find. So
yeah,
and I said, you know what? This is collared shirt. That's good enough.
Yeah,
so
I was thinking that I probably should have amended that email with like wear a collared shirt or anything with your company
and
logo
pants.
on. And well, no, actually, pants are optional unless we get like a weird pan down.
0% chance that Dan is wearing pants right now.
It's
Let's be
pajama
honest.
pants. It's flannel pants. It's basically what I wear all day, every day. But I did go hoopball t-shirt and blazer today too. So Brew and I are. This is like the SoCal version, the t-shirt and the blazer, and he's the NorCal version of the hoodie and the blazer. I like that you got the In This League logo in the background. I was going to say you could have something with the ITL on that. Tell the listeners where they can find more on ITL action.
Well, I mean, we cover everything over at ITL. We've got football, baseball, basketball, all covered for you. We just put out our 99 fantasy baseball players debate book. So that was a intense labor of love. So if you would go pick that up, that would be amazing. And, you know, at Bogman Sports, at Is It The Welsh on the Twitter machine.
Yep.
So,
and you guys had a baseball trade. I'm not going to spend too much time on a fantasy NBA trade deadline show, but you had a baseball trade at the NBA deadline.
Yeah, JT Realmuto finally got dealt. That was like the, I saw someone on Twitter describe it as the George R. Martin of trades, where we've been talking about JT Realmuto possibly getting moved for, you know, since the middle of midway spot through last year. So he finally got moved to Philly, and the Welsh thinks it's a precursor to possibly Bryce Harper signing there. So all kinds of trade stuff going on, impacting every sport today.
Yeah, we had a couple folks in our chat room say the best trade of the day was the Real Muto trade. Yeah, the Game of Thrones reference there, it's almost like much like the show, it sort of got past the book. Nobody actually knew how this thing was going to turn out. As a Dodger fan, I was hoping, but it looks like it's Austin Barnes and Russell Martin. Anyway.
Yep. Looks like I can still like Real Muto. He's not on the Dodgers.
That's right. All your deep. Although, how do you feel about AJ Pollock now?
You know what? You guys can have AJ Pollock. You'll get about 2 seasons worth of that 4-year deal. So
yeah, you're probably right.
Constantly hurt.
So the funny thing about all of this stuff with the trade deadline is that there isn't really a deep breath at any point. Teams play tonight, and it's actually because we're not on the All-Star break anymore. It's by all accounts a mildly busy Thursday. We don't have that like 4 days of sitting around waiting to see guys are going to miss games. There's going to be these weird days off. But it's got to be pretty weird from a mental standpoint, right? For these guys that either just got traded or if you're the Lakers, like the 15 guys that didn't get traded to go out and play in the Garden tonight. That's the TD Garden, I should say. That's a weird spot to be in, isn't it?
I mean, it doesn't get any weirder than Harrison Barnes getting flipped mid-game and sitting on the sideline until it was over, right?
Yeah, it's been a strange deadline. What are you looking for, Bogman, in like this weird in-between period? Anything in particular?
I don't know that there's anything I'm looking for specifically. I just want it to be. I like the fact that we had the earlier trade deadline this year because it means that we can get these guys acclimated a little bit quicker than normal. And after the All-Star game, I think everyone should be caught up to speed and kind of know what their role with their new squad is. So. Not anything in particular, but I'm just looking for, the build to look and the roles to play out.
I like that you brought up the timeline. Actually, that was something that I didn't talk about much on today's show, and it's a lot better. Most of these teams are around 52 to 54 games played, which means that the acquisitions will have closer to 30 games with their new team as opposed to in seasons past. Some of these all-star trades, the guys missed the game if they didn't get moved in time or they had to pack or something like that. You'd get guys that were only playing like 20 games with a new team down the stretch. That was a pretty minimal number. Getting an extra 5 to 10 games with this, whatever it is, it's like 2.5 weeks or something, right, until we get to the break. That's a big deal for folks making moves. I think that's a pretty cool story. And the only question now, Brew, we did talk a little bit earlier about how it's impacted the buyout market, since that now is teams can, if they wanted to, they could just hold on to veterans and not play them for like 3 weeks. The buyout deadline is March, I think, if you're signing with a new team for the playoffs. But it seems like unless there's spite, nobody's really holding on to anybody and then buying them out 3 weeks from now, right?
There's some spite out there. I mean, I guess Enes Kanter's already getting let go, so that's most of the spite in one player.
Yeah, they knew he was going to cause more trouble.
Lopez thing, like Robin Lopez getting bought out and Chicago not having any sort of real replacement there, just fascinating to me. I mean, you're going to play Cristiano Felicio, like. I mean, is he able to run up and down the court?
No, he was actually by our good friend of the show, Gil Alexander over at VSiN. The advanced metrics folks had Cristiano Felicio ranked as the last player in the NBA last year. He was the worst overall. I know, and I feel a little bit bad, but I don't think he's watching this thing. They basically called him the human tank because when they put him on the court, all of their lineups went down.
I don't doubt it. He got really large, man. Like he had this moment where you could see outlines of, a potential good player in the NBA, or a good low end rotation player to be accurate. But now, like, you have to play Lauri Markkanen at center a significant amount of time. And is this because they really believe in Chandler Hutchison, or they want to make Hutchison look good? So when he gets healthy, they bring him back, play him at small forward, put Otto Porter at power forward. I mean, I'm just kind of shocked. Like, I mean, Timothy Luwawu maybe could handle some minutes. His knee's not been right since he got in the league. But you don't really want Lauri Markkanen, just getting beat up on a night-to-night basis by opposing centers. So maybe they think Wendell Carter's coming back sooner rather than later. But that's just, you look at that big gap and you just wonder how, like, they're already terrible. How is that going to look when they're even worse?
Maybe they'll go get Gortat, who's supposed to be released too. I don't know.
Well, and yeah, I mean, but again, I guess you would get a veteran that just needs to prove that they can play.
Right.
Who's on the buyout market right now? Maybe that should be our last.
Looks like Ben McLemore just got bought out.
Hey, Ben McLemore's on the buyout market.
It's Dan's favorite player, so I hadn't mentioned him.
We got Wes Matthews. We got Ben McLemore. You got Robin Lopez. You have Enes Kanter. The list, I'm sure, is a lot longer than that, but I mean, there's a lot of likely Wayne Ellington, right? He's probably going to be on the buyout market.
Yeah.
Who am I forgetting? Feel free to just shout him out. At this point, we're at the end of the show.
I like the Wayne Ellington one because I think it was Jonas yesterday, who's the other part of the Big Three show with Dan and I. He said, "Look, the Suns acquired something good, so why don't they immediately get rid of it?" So
they wanted Tyler Johnson, and Brew, you said it earlier in this show, they've been searching for a point guard forever, and they got a non-point guard
that can't play. I mean, like, are we really asking Markelle Fultz to get up and over all of his issues, and whether they're physical or mental? And we got to source Keith Smith here, claiming,
you're talking Orlando. We were talking Phoenix.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, we're talking Tyler Johnson?
Tyler Johnson, yeah.
Oh, I thought we were talking the Magic for a second. Sorry. Yeah, no, Tyler Johnson can come in and do stuff, but like he again, like you said, like point guard, they need a point guard. They can't, and it's about Devin Booker's long-term development. I like completely what spaced and I just started talking Orlando Magic for no reason, they gotta, for Devin Booker's development, just get him off the ball a little bit, because you got a lot of good things going on with that team. You got Mikal Bridges, he needs to get his minutes. Kelly Oubre needs to get his minutes, but they also got to get touches. You got to get these guys into a rhythm, and DeAndre Ayton's got to learn how to play with Booker, and so all the way down the line, getting a good point guard who can organize the offense. I mean, that should have been job one there. So, who knows?
Yeah, the Suns are a weird case, 100%. So, but Wayne Ellington. I mean, there's going to be plenty of teams trying to snap up Ellington, right, Dan?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, it sounds like the Pistons have already put their hat into the ring. The Lakers, I have to imagine, they've cleared out a roster spot in that deal with the Clippers. I know we heard about Melo, so I'll put him on my list of guys that have been bought out. Who am I missing? Is there anybody I'm missing on the buyout market?
I mean, Kaminsky hit it pretty hard today on the buyout market, but
all right, I mean, fair enough. All right, well, we'll go into wrap-up mode at that point. We got about 9 minutes left on the show before we put a pin in this thing. Brew, I'll start with you on this bad boy. We had about 15, 16 trades, I think, over the last 3 or 4 days. It sounds like, now that I think we can safely call things kind of settled, pickups. That's what everybody wants to know at this point. And the chat room continues to go crazy with so-and-so versus so-and-so and ones that I didn't get to. Delon Wright was a guy that we were very high on. Mike Conley didn't get moved, so that scaled it back a little bit. What are the rest of the season for you, Brew, on Wright now that Conley is staying? Because you said he could potentially go as high as like a top 50, top 60 guy if he was basically the only guard left. With Conley around, where does that put his expected outcome and even his ceiling?
I think I'm going to put his expected outcome at top 120. There's still a lot of uncertainty with that. And I want to give owners room for growth here. I think in the 20 to 24 minutes per game that he can get with Conley playing a full boat, Holiday playing, 28 to 30 minutes, Kyle Anderson playing 28 to 30 minutes. I think Bruno Caboclo gets scaled way back. You got to see what they're going to do with Avery Bradley. Not quite sure what they want to do there. So if they play him 24 to 26 minutes, now you're starting to get a little bit crowded there. JV probably plays something like 24 to 26, maybe 28 minutes if things are going really well. Jaren Jackson swaps between the two positions and, probably starts at power forward and, gets his 30 plus minutes per game. So, you got a lot of minutes. The JaMychal Green exit helps, push Kyle Anderson up into probably some power forward minutes against small teams. So they've got a glut of wings, and at the same time, Delon Wright is good enough to earn those 20 to 24 minutes and get into that top 125 range.
Could he get up closer to 30 in any situation? Avery Bradley's in town too.
I think, I don't know that Avery Bradley's going to factor too much into it. He's lost a lot off of his fastball. He's dealt with some off the court stuff. He's been just not the same guy. And at the same time, that could be the reason why he pushes hard to, get back, to a previous level. He hasn't been good in Los Angeles, and he's gotten plenty of opportunity to be good. So what I think with Delon Wright, though, with 125 value, I still think he's the type of player. I kind of feel like he's a must-add player, but I realize a lot of players play in shallower leagues, 10 to 12 team leagues, where they probably have some pretty good options that they might be discarding. So you might not just consider him a stop and go grab him ad, but with the possibility, like Mike Conley could easily get shut down for any number of reasons. He's still got a pretty good amount of his contract left. There's no reason to play him heavy minutes when you're trying to lose. So there's a couple different ways that Wright could get up into the 24, 26, 28 minute range, in which case I think he's probably about a top 90, top 80, maybe even give him top 75 upside. But, it's getting harder to predict that unless we know that Mike Conley is, on his way out for whatever reason.
You had mentioned,
I mean, that's good though. I mean, I'd probably take Zubac if I need a rock solid player over him.
Okay, so that one flipped back a little bit on you.
It flipped back, but you guys know me. I want the upside, so I'm going to take Wright over Zubac unless I absolutely need a big man.
Brew, I didn't get to hear your thoughts on Harrison Barnes going to the Kings. So I'm sure you've talked about it a little bit already, but can I hear it?
Yeah, from a fantasy basketball perspective, he's got a pretty good usage rate. I think that he has fans in the front office. I think that they're going to let him more or less kind of be what he's going to be. But the real thing he needs to be for this team is like a third, fourth, or fifth option, because De'Aaron Fox brings something to this team that's really unique in the league. And if they're running, they just are walking into wide open 3-point shots. They're getting so much good stuff off of the pace. But now, you got Marvin Bagley, who's got an enhanced role. You've got Barnes in here, who has played in faster paced offenses, but as a dribbling ISO player, he's not really, designed for a high pace. I almost wonder if the Kings dial back their pace because of these two players, which would take the identity of the team away from a De'Aaron Fox centric team and move it more towards a balanced team. There's some pros and cons to that, but at any rate, he's going to take a little bit from Fox. Hield is this guy that you just don't want not shooting. And the Kings haven't figured that out yet, is you can't go in a game without Buddy Hield shooting as many shots as he can get, because he's just going to make them all. It's really,
I like that. Yeah.
It's fascinating to watch this player really improve over the years. And, as far as, Marvin Bagley, he's trying to be a number one player in this league. You can just see it all over the way that he plays. He's taking too many shots, bad shots. And you can make an argument that that's okay because you like the aggression. You just need to reel it in a tiny bit. But there's going to be a clawback to each of their values because of the arrival of Barnes. And then as far as, the reality side of it goes, they didn't give a lot to get him. I think the most compelling argument against this deal that I've seen out there is, one, everybody's overrating Harrison Barnes, which is totally true.
Yeah.
Two is, what could you have done other than that? This is like a middle of the road move, but I do think it makes them, a playoff team. And I also think that it makes them a little bit dangerous if they could somehow add another piece that they didn't add.
And it's still the Kings buying. When was the last time the Kings were buying at the deadline, bro?
Not when I was covering them.
Right. Yeah. It's exciting.
Well, there's an avenue here too, because with the Clippers, I know they picked up some guys at the trade deadline, but trading away Tobias Harris probably takes them from the 8 seed, one would assume, out, even if you can try to claim that they're still making a push at it. I believe they keep their pick if they miss the playoffs this year. So they're actually incentivized to not be the 8 seed. And so the Kings see that and they're like, oh, well, that's the only team standing between us and a playoff spot. Obviously LeBron back, the Lakers are going to be in trouble, but the Mavericks, they're going into the tank. Timberwolves just kind of stink. And the Pelicans, they've gone into a tank. Grizzlies, they fell apart a month and a half ago. Suddenly, the West, which was like 14 deep 6 weeks ago, is now more like 9 deep. 9.5 if you want to put the Clippers still in there, because they'll still find a way to win some ball games. But things got it's whittled down a little bit, and out east, I think you can make the argument that maybe 10 teams are still fighting for a playoff spot. You could maybe the Magic, you put it at 11. So we're starting to get a little bit more clarity here. Bogman, we're in our last 2 minutes of show, because then I'm going to go pass out somewhere for 20 minutes.
Probably take a leak, right? I mean,
no, oddly enough, I'm actually doing okay on that front.
Look at you.
I'm a man who's slight of frame, but I have the bladder power of a racing horse.
It's you and Andrew Siciliano who does the football red zone. I always wonder when that guy, if he ever goes to the bathroom.
Oh, by the way, trick of the trade, I might or might not have an amateurly inserted catheter under the table.
Right now. Well, let's talk about anything else.
No, yeah, I'm not getting into that right now. We're at the end of the show. People are like, Dan just mentioned a catheter.
I'm not listening anyway.
Bogman, I want to give you a massive thank you for hopping on here in our tail end of the program.
Guys, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
At Bogman Sports on Twitter if you want to give him a follow, and you should. And I'd like to take the last minute of the show to just thank everybody that came on today's 4-hour trade deadline special. I've got to pull up the list of guests so I make sure I don't miss anybody from this thing. But we started it with an hour of our good buddy Neil Rochlani, which is, of course, you should check out the Box Score Breakdown. Fantastic show he does with Adrian Benjamins every night when the games are complete. And you guys can probably hear the voices starting to fail on me a little bit. So this is officially the end of the program. Neil is at Ball with Neil on Twitter. Coach at Joe Sarvati. Hank Aaron is at Hank_Aaron2. JC is at JC De Leon. Corbin is at Corbin Ford NBA. Vince Miracle at VM Center. Brandon is at BD Marcus. Mike Apotria is at Mike Apotria on Twitter. And of course, I am at Dan Vespers. And the big dog is at Aaron Brewski on Twitter as well. The site is hoop-ball.com. Hope you guys enjoyed the coverage. We really enjoyed having so many of you checking it out for 4 hours with us. Many of you are still hanging on here even while I'm thanking everybody. And a big thank you to Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee for making all of this possible as well. Folks, have a wonderful Thursday. We'll be back on Twitter with information all the time. You've got a nightly show. You've got podcasts. Check out Fantasy NBA Today as well. And with that, I take a deep breath, a final sip from my cup of water, and bid you all adieu. So long.